logical backgrounds of the talk today. So in the next part, in part 2, I introduce my understandings of some of the conference keywords alongside Sarah Arman's idea of promise of happiness. I also look at 2 other concepts, thinking with and cruel optimism, which I clearly draw from the late Laurent Blount. In part 3, what I think is the chunkiest part of this paper, I take these concepts from Arman and Blount and work with them to discuss examples from my own research and position, where I've come to understand that these different component parts of migration work together with different intersectional outcomes. And in the final part, part 4, I attempt to kind of sow some seeds for discussion, hopefully, and think about what we do with the unhappy baggage of migration. So part 1, positions. And there is quite a few photos here of my family, because as you'll see, they're also migrants. So this is my babcia and my prajajo, and my babcia and my prachocha, I think, so great auntie, my grandmother, and my great grandfather. So, I'm a migrant. This was me packing up my house in Sydney, selling things. My grandparents were migrants, and this is my grandfather. I understand then what it's like to move to a new place and not understand. So this is my early attempts at Swedish language school. I'm not sure that they've improved significantly. But I also understand how my move and my grandparents' move were so different, and these are some of the things that I'll get into. So I continue the introduction of this paper closer to home with my own migrant trajectory, including my family, who were all born in Poland. So on the screen is a copy of my great-grandmother's baptismal certificate. The town, Nyambia, Russia, is the only one material trace I have locating where she was born. Her last daughter, the last of 7 kids, my grandmother, was born in 1937, making her 2 years old when World War II began. And she'd spent much of her life telling me and others that she was born in Vilno, and this is how she understood the place we are now, Vilnius. We do not know, what we do know is that she was baptized here, as this was the closest, largest town to where she was born. But I have no way of confirming any other parts of this information because there are no documents of her birth. And in 1939, my great-grandmother, losing her husband in the same year, fled their village, 7 kids in tow, across Poland, and eventually somehow made it to Australia. So apart from that piece of information, my babcia told me only one other story, and that was the day about when they left their farm. She told me that she noticed that the chickens in the yard were agitated and behaving strangely. She told me that later she thought that this was because they must have sensed some kind of vibration of machinery approaching. I imagine, however, that she was probably too young to have remembered this. But what I remember is how she told me. I remember the distinctive shiver in her words and the way that she held her body. So whether it happened or not is probably inconsequential, because she felt it. She was, from a young age, a woman on the move. Arman has reasoned that migration is not only felt at the level of embodiment, but migration is also a matter of generational acts of storytelling about prior histories and of movement and dislocation. So my movement and dislocation framed all of my Polish great-grandparents and grandparents' lives and their trajectories as post-war refugees to Australia in what was Australia's still largest ever migrant intake has shaped both my personal and professional understandings of identity and migration, which include my identity as a 3rd-generation Australian Pole and now my identity as a migrant too. So their lives and that of my parents in post-war Australia, while it was still negotiating what it's still, I think, trying to negotiate as multicultural identity, has had very different outcomes for how we understand ourselves. But for them, for my grandparents, the post-war rupture and the leaving of a place with that possibility at that stage of return is something that was very different. So as I hinted, my migrant positionality has influenced my research focus. And those interests, as Tania has explained, examine the linkages between the meta-concepts of memory, migration, and identity. So I take a feminist constructionist position to identity, seeing it as fluid, partial, never complete, and taking shape across individual, communal, and national scales. As a geographer, my conceptualizations of identity are spatial, place-specific, and they're contextualized in the how, when, what, and with what outcomes those identities are negotiated. So when you're investigating the relationship of identity spatially, I've been also attentive to how they come out and how they're played out unequally as well. Okay, so that's a bit about me. So now positioning the concepts in part 2. So in the abstract, I asked, what does it feel like to be a woman on the move? So for me, the key word and emotion here is feel. How is migration felt? How can we as researchers capture and articulate these feelings? What methods and narrative techniques allow us access into these feelings? And why does it matter at all what it feels like? And as you can probably imagine, that's Probupcha there. In the practice of my research trajectory, I've used my body as a tool in research. Using my body has meant recognizing its experience and the role of experience as a granddaughter of migrants and as a migrant myself, and how sometimes my body knows technically more than I can know or think about these topics as well. Rather, to know them and to know them differently, I have had to think with my body. Thinking with beckons us towards crossing disciplinary boundaries, of thinking between and within layers of memory, place, and identity, of the potentialities of thinking with body across material and digital spaces, and it reveals a commitment to a collective knowledge-making. Kai Askins has reasoned that thinking with is a type of bodywork, that writing with the body together makes us more aware of this kind of potent way to explore knowledge and come to new dimensions of this knowledge as well. And I think it's strangely coincidental that on the slide, so I'm the chubby toddler with the red thing on. That's my screaming sister, who should appreciate that photo, I think. But holding her is my grandmother, who was actually my age now. So she was incredibly young by our standards these days to be a grandmother too. So as Ahmed says, and what I will do through this keynote is have these kind of intersection slides that draw together pieces of information. So Ahmed says what migration narratives involve then is a spatial reconfiguration of an embodied self, a transformation in the very skin through which the body is embodied. So before leaving this point, I want to flesh out the idea of thinking with a little further. I've just spent the last 2 days at a conference focused on walking as method and concept in Finland. Walking makes us mobile. It puts us in contact with our environments, and it helps us understand our connections to place. For migrants, connecting with place post-migration is crucial to smoother processes of integration and settlement. We walk with our bodies. Sometimes we consciously think where we are going, and sometimes we turn or detour as our bodies think with memories of different pathways of past rupture or when they sense danger. So on the screen is a map of a Sri Lankan asylum seeker's home in Sydney, Australia, where my then PhD student, Charishma Ratnam, walked with these asylum seekers in their homes while videoing and asking them how their home and the maintenance of culture therein helped them feel at home and then settle. Charishma asked them, can you explain how this home makes you feel connected to Sri Lanka? So in this example, the participant, Meena, rather than remaining in the location where that question was asked, at the fish tank, proceeded directly outside to the garden. And this movement, an instance of detour, demonstrated connection points between body memory and movement. Meena's change in direction echoed Bissell's quote on the screen now, that there is a call to pay attention to what bodies actually do in order to rethink through and reconfigure what is implied by activity, agency, and engagement. So in the paper from this, Charishma and I focused on these moments of detour, where participants' bodies directed them around their houses, and as they were moved by these connections and experiences to their homeland. So these instances of thinking with provide us with examples of how much immaterial baggage we as migrants carry with us in our bodies, and how these pieces of luggage, big and small, remain, how they shape, influence, and refract. So with every migration and refugee, and we're going to use the crisis in inverted comma terms, arises, questions also arise about how and where migrants settle, integrate, encounter intolerance, and how place-based contingencies matter in that settlement and integration too. So whether these migrations be forced or voluntary, understanding migration as a process that is fraught and wrapped up with emotions and emotional encounters is paramount. Migration involves a plethora of emotions, which variously manifest as nostalgia, loss, anxiousness, fear, joy, relief, satisfaction, to name just a few. So in asking what does migration look and feel like, I qualify this question by contextualizing those preconditions of migration. That migration may be for family, love, or a combination of these, or work, or it may have been forced by conflict, violence, and persecution. And clearly these differences matter. Yet they are both felt differently, but they have different capacities for feeling too. This difference is patent in my migration as a highly skilled migrant moving for a job and a quality of life change to my forebears who moved because the safety of their lives depended on it. But to complicate this even further is to add another level of complexity to these discussions of feeling and moving, and how they are gendered, generational, expectant of change as well, to be happy or happier at least, and maybe to move with hope. So the notion that one's migration decisions are gendered and generational leads us to Sara Ahmed and her conceptualization of happiness. For me, what stands out in Ahmed's promise of happiness is the idea of sociality, the social necessity, and the social responsibility to be happy. That happiness is something we should be aspirational about. It also seems odd to suggest otherwise, and I suppose that is a big part of her point, that we should all want to feel happy, but in what she sees as rather prescriptive ways. Ahmed says that there is a right way to be happy. As Ahmed puts it from the quote on the slide, the ideas of happiness involve social as well as moral distinctions, insofar as they rest on ideas of who is worthy as well as capable of being happy in the right way. So I think this is where Ahmed's idea finds most purchase, where and when we frame them within the context of migrants and migration. Migrants should be happy because happiness is imagined as what allows subjects to embrace futurity, to leave the past behind them. But what does it actually mean to leave the past behind them? Of course, migrants leave their past homelands. They may also leave some or all of their belongings, depending on circumstance. But what else is wrapped up in this articulation of the past? When Ahmed wrote Home and Away, her familial experience as a migrant to and from Australia give us some clues to answering this question. In my History of Migration to Australia lecture, in first year Human Geography in Sydney, I'd often show pictures like this. It is quite a common picture from the Australian government about migrants arriving by boat post-World War II. So two things stand out to me in this picture. They all look happy, apart from the fact they've just been on a boat for probably 9 to 12 weeks. And most of them are holding this very iconic looking suitcase, the suitcase of migrant possessions. I often ask my students, what do you think migrants brought with them in that suitcase? What was in it? I then ask them, what do they think that they left behind? And then I ask them, what do they think that they have carried with them that we cannot see? I poke at the idea that the things carried with them that we cannot see are the memories of the homeland, experiences of rupture, perhaps trauma, but also of happy times in the places that they left behind. But we don't see any of these things, the longing, the nostalgia, the melancholy, trauma, and heartbreak. We don't see them in this image. And why? Because this image is oriented towards the future, to new lives, new homeland, new happiness. That past and the reasons for leaving should be left on the boat. Once you step off the gangplank into your new country, you should be ready to embrace and willing to embrace futurity. I make these connections in Ahmed's work not just because I know that it is virtually impossible for many migrants stepping off these boats to leave their pasts behind, but because in post-war receiving countries like Australia, migration was and still is a technology of citizenship as a way of binding migrants to a national ideal. The expectation was that to be happy in the right way, to be with the new nation, you needed to also leave that invisible baggage behind. So alongside happiness, another very common motivation for migration is the promise of change, a hopefulness of change. For some whose migration is forced, this hope relates to our present and future generations, who we hope will not endure the same fate, that of fleeing home and homeland will not happen again, at least to us, to our kin, to our nation. We feel this sense of hope. Hope as an activity saturates the corporeal, intimate and political performances of adjustment that make a shared atmosphere something that is palpable. Hope can also bring optimism. So Belarus argued that determining the parameters for optimistic assumptions of a better way of life rely on this type of all-in-here aesthetic of collective hope, not that dissimilar to Ahmed's idea of the promise of happiness. They contended that we are patterned into a mode of thinking that we need to remain hopeful of or for future positive change. Hope then is a palpable aspiration we embody because optimism comes with a space of possibility. It is positioned as seemingly preferable to no hope at all. Moreover, we cannot know how something will turn out, but we can have a sensation that, and hope that it will go well. My grandparents perhaps hoped for a better future in Australia. They hoped for a post-war life free from conflict and violence that affected their childhood. Belarus suggested that with this optimism, we come to expect that this time, nearness to this thing will help you or a world become different in just the right way. So, while this, I think, was the case for them, for those of their kin or those who chose to remain in Poland or could not leave, the hope for a more trouble-free post-war existence was clearly differently experienced. So to develop Belarus's reasoning just a little bit further along these lines of cruel optimism, I interlink it with the idea of thinking with. And I started to think with how optimism and hope can inhibit, hamper, and fasten identities to the pasts that they have inhabited. The desire we have for a better life, in whatever articulation it is, can then also be the thing that starts to hold us back, whether that is because we work too hard in a relentless capitalist neoliberal system, or we live under a regime whose politics constrain our rights and movements, or in reference to the image on the slide now, we affix too much or too tightly to an idea of the past to be able to overcome it. Belarus argued that a relation of cruel optimism exists when something you desire is actually the obstacle to you flourishing. And the stickiness of that past, and in the case of the cartoon or image on the screen, in the Polish case of the struggles for foreign occupation, it is also linked to this idea that Anderson, from the quote on the slide, suggests that such a relation is cruel because it brings harm whether one exists in it or not. Okay, so what do we do with Sarah Ahmed's ideas about unhappiness, melancholy migrants, and Laurent Belarus's ideas of cruel optimism? I suggest, as Doreen Massey has suggested, that to move through this, to think with it, we need to have a powerful imaginative geography. So in what follows, I take these notions of happiness and hope and talk through three worked examples: reworking, remaking, and reinventing, in which I draw in the gendered aspects of these as well. So this was remaking in the process. It's my other grandparents building their holiday home in the south part of New South Wales. Memories aid in the recreation of spaces and spaces of belonging, especially in the home. So here's another one of these gangplank images, where images of the home and the past events and people and place have been invested and are invested into diasporic settings. So Talia Kelly has examined how the home is a site where material artefacts link remembrances to the homeland to recreate a diasporic home. She documented how religious iconography, paintings, and other strategically placed objects create this recreation. But as Korzoun has suggested from the quote on the slide, for those who, under threat, flee home, the tangible is often sacrificed, and all that can be transported are memories and dreams, the myths of return and home. So how then do we remake when we are migrants? For first-generation migrants, remembrances of home often include memories of the homeland as it was left behind, as a place where experience of disruption and dislocation began. For subsequent diasporic generations, constructions of home may be different and attachments to the homeland lessened, particularly if visitation is not possible. But the home is a space where cultural identifications are played out in response to different attachments to it. But remaking home, new homes post-migration, is often something, and the role for that falls to women in households, to grandmothers, to mothers, aunts, and daughters. So I turn here to research with my Polish migrants from my doctoral research in Australia, to when I asked them how they maintain these cultural traditions of Polish identity in the home. Women's role in the home, and indeed constructions of the home, often featured indirectly or directly in those conversations. So one participant who had migrated in what we had come in the thesis to agree on as calling the post-okres komunizmu period, said that, "I think Polish identity is centred around the home. The woman is just this person who keeps the walls of the family and keeps the tradition of the family. So the mother was taught by her mother, and it will be passed on. I think that in Poland the tradition is passed through women. They play a much bigger role than men. All this Polishness survived because of women, because they were able to pass this tradition through generations and keep the Polishness going." And I think it's no irony that in this photo of my other great-grandmother and my other great-grandfather, he's surrounded by women. They obviously cooked everything that was before on the table, they set it, they cleaned it up, and he probably stayed seated the whole time. So what does this maintenance of remaking of home entail? So many scholars in the social sciences have written extensively about the role of material artefacts, as Divya Tolli, who I just mentioned before, and how they create a connection between past and present, as well as tangible reminders of home. So on the screen now is a collection of objects, which my mother would call pierdolki, which she would also describe then as dust-collecting objects that Polish people or relatives had given her, and not being able to discard them, she had to put them on shelves that adorned the wall units. But then they also created touchstones and talking points to past homelands that they didn't know, and that they only knew through stories of their parents. But perhaps the most familiar examples of remaking for female migrants is in the kitchen. We know that food provides a very palpable reminder of home. Of course, food needs to be prepared, and when I think of all the large-scale events of my childhood, there was always a clear spatial demarcation of these events. My grandmother and my aunts were in the kitchen, and my grandfather and my uncles were outside. The food preparation was always, quite literally, epic. And this type of cultural maintenance through food is, of course, not limited to Polish migrants. And we know that the responsibility for food preparation, the narration of folklore, the reproduction of traditional arts and crafts often falls to women. This type of cultural care work juxtaposes sharply with other types of work expected of women too. So now I move to reworking. Here in this second worked example, I might deviate a little from migration, but land firmly in the territory of work. We know that post-migration women are largely responsible for this care work in the home, for the maintaining of culture, the undertaking of reproductive labour and care, and maintaining the household too. Weighted all, it suggested that in Western cities there was this distinct separation in the function and form between urban and suburban areas in the post-industrial capitalist period in the 18th and 19th century. But certainly for many migrant women, wage work has been a necessity for survival. So my dad read the following words at my So my grandmother, the one who was christened here, she recently passed away just this year. And he said that at the age of 15, she gave up school and decided to seek employment. And she worked very hard and tried her best to become financially independent. She took on shift work alongside her caring responsibilities, but she never complained about her hard times struggling and juggling work and the demands of us all. Indeed, it is increasingly rare nowadays for women not also to engage in wage work, the type of work where one receives pay for labour by an employer. So these dual roles are, I think, part of the promise of unhappiness of modern womanhood, or maybe that's too grim for Wednesday morning. It's Wednesday, right? The infographic on the screen calculates care work hours. And we know that combining this with wage work can be challenging, and it is. As women have increasingly entered the workforce, and especially the type of wage work that is career-oriented, questions of balance, of work-life balance, and of whether women can indeed have it all echo through my head on quite a daily basis. How can we do all these things? The ironing, the shopping, the cooking, and the cleaning. Well, for some of us, the answer to this question is that we are fortunate enough to hire other women to do what is normatively considered women's care work. And here we are back at migration again. Women either independently or in households hire nannies, au pairs, housekeepers, cleaners, babysitters, and they outsource ironing and washing too, where possible. Filling the gap at home has become easier with relatively cheap source of migrant labour, who take unskilled jobs and low-level sector skilled work jobs too. Often, their temporary work status, limited by a visa system designed to plug gaps in the labour market, keeps this section of the workforce viable, as does the fact that neoliberal policies across the global north have stripped back childcare services and paid parental leave too, making the hiring of care-related work necessary. So in Sydney, before I moved to Stockholm, I felt this need acutely. Being unable to find childcare for my firstborn, with only unpaid parental leave at the time, yes, Australia still had unpaid parental leave, me and another academic hired a nanny from Poland for a few days a week. Then, once I had 2 kids, we hired a series of au pairs, first from the Czech Republic, then from the US, and then from Spain. All of these au pairs arrived on student visas to study English with only the capacity to work in paid employment for 20 hours a week. You simply cannot live in Sydney on 20 hours a week of paid employment. Thus, the majority of these language courses, these students who arrived in private language courses on these visas, seek work as au pairs. The reworking of one system facilitates another. Speaking of reworking the system, I'm sure that as academics you share my sentiments about the fact that we must also work against the system a little bit to facilitate better care practices. So I did also, out of necessity while working in Sydney, take my kids on field work. So this is my older son, very young at the time, sitting in Singapore while I was doing research there on World War II commemoration. He knows way too much about war memorials, my son. So I often melded care work and wage work in a sometimes delicate juggle of the many materialities of a working academic mum, which included in suitcases, of course, the materialities of my own breasts, but also bottles, breast pads, bras, sterilizers, breast milk, formula, children's toys, nappies, but also dictaphones, cameras, ethics paperwork, and the like, all together in one bag. So the nature and the extent and the form of care relations are obviously really affected by where they take place too. But I was always acutely aware through these processes of the unspoken criticism of this reworking and of my mothering and academic choices, which is so eloquently expressed by McGrath here, when she says there is a sense that a man who takes his wife and children into the field will not be duly distracted by their needs. His situation may not be ideal, but he will be able to find focus on the questions at hand. In contrast, there is an implicit contention that a woman who is with her family would never be able to put aside her role as a wife or mother to allow for the clear thinking for good research. So, to McGrath's previous quote, I hazard a guess that Massey might say that the language we use has effects in moulding identities and characterising social relationships. It is crucial to the formation of ideological scaffolding of a hegemonic common sense, that discourse matters. So how we talk about social practices has the implication for how they're sustained as well, and that we should agitate and advocate for their reworking. So in moving to the final section on reinvention, I hope to offer a little bit more hope and happiness, maybe without some of the attendant cruel optimism. So reinvention. What does it take to move, to remake, rework, to carry the luggage? For me, northward to Sweden, 6 years ago, my family moved from Sydney to Stockholm. We were looking for a better work-life balance. I'd had a secure job in Sydney, but the system was difficult, hence the au pairs and the nannies. I was the pioneer migrant. I applied and found the job mainly because securing an academic job is much harder in a new location than other jobs. Moving to Sweden meant that I was going back north, further north than my grandparents, but also, of course, with very different material circumstances too. But if I am to answer my first question of what migration feels like, I would probably say scary, and then probably exciting, then frustrating, then hopeful, followed by many adjectives and some probably expletives in between, depending on the circumstance. So while I didn't know if this adventure would work, what I did know is that if it didn't, I could come back. And this is a luxury that few migrants have. If I look from that point of departure to now, I couldn't possibly have predicted that in the years between, a global pandemic would keep me from being able to visit my family in Australia and keep them locked in there too. That my kids' language capacities would amaze me, or that my immediate family situation would change so dramatically. I can feel the gravity of these recent changes and challenges in my body. I feel them now when I speak, and I can honestly say that the feeling I associated with those first few years of migration, especially because that COVID period, is loneliness and isolation. And I'm certain that despite our very different circumstances, my grandparents would have felt the same. But I promised a happy story. So what this period of challenge and change has also brought is opportunity for reinvention. By reinvention, I mean both reinvention of self, but partly also of my academic focus too. Never would I have imagined that I would have founded a Swedish company and in that role developed a mobile application for the collection of qualitative data, this one on the screen now, QualNotes. Never. And this opportunity, of course, didn't happen, and I worked incredibly hard at the back end of developing this. But I know somewhat how to speak entrepreneur and how to understand that world along my other one as well. So this is the main screen of that app. This is my reinvention of Type, and it's designed to enable research that I do, the research of the collection of qualitative data and the teaching of qualitative methods too, and the integration of participant observation, of interviews and mobile mapping. So all those things I came to understand that were important in how I did my research, I built into this, in this type of reinvention. I also built in the ability for us to put those pesky ethics and consent forms that I used to carry around with all the other baby materialities in there too. So for me, this is a mixture of happiness and hope. And it's an example of how this reinvention has led to opportunity. So in the final slides of the keynote, I returned to Ahmed and Berlon's ideas of unhappiness. So I'm back to unhappy and cruel optimism. As you know, much of my research is focused on migration and how migrants negotiate these identities in host countries. And what does this mean for the reframing of national identities more broadly, though? In researching these themes, I've tried to remain mindful for the unhappy baggage that continues to be carried well into the initial or past the initial post-settlement period. So my privilege as a white European migrant means that the colour of my skin doesn't identify me as other, yet my language skills and my accent always will. For others who are othered, fitting in and the possibility of feeling like happy citizens may be more challenging. Sara Ahmed reasoned that the promise of happiness is aligned with white aspirations of what that happiness is. She also questions how migrants that don't fit in embody that difference when she states that the acts of remembering hence are felt on and in the migrant bodies in the form of discomfort, the failure to fully inhabit the presence or present space. Migration can hence be considered as a process of estrangement, a process of becoming estranged from that which was inhabited as home. So in an interview with an online German magazine about migration in 2014, Armand stated that emotion is performed to imply that the history is behind us. It is a way of covering over an injury that has an ongoing historical presence. In that example, she was referring to the shame that Australians felt towards histories of dispossession of Australian Indigenous peoples. But I think that her use of the phrase ongoing historical present is equally relatable to overt examples of othering, racism and sexism we find and encounter in our own societies. The histories of difference of minority communities, including women and migrants, are not for public viewing, because in this way the nation has failed to deal with their integration into wider society. I want to finish this keynote by suggesting that leaving the unhappy baggage on the platform does not and will not make us happy as migrants. I know from my own experience and that I've inherited from my family that our baggage comprises our histories and that these are also part of our strengths. I will never know just quite how three of my great-grandmothers with many fewer financial resources and not much else than their village primary school education, if they had that, managed to get their young families through war-torn Poland and eventually to Australia. The thought is quite literally beyond me. Sadly, there are many women today in conflict zones doing the same, still sheltering their kids and still on the move. But what I do know is that there are some incredibly strong women, and that strength was a resource. It is also one of the items from their past carried in that suitcase. I would like to think that collectively in migrant receiving countries, we should work harder to acknowledge that people on the move, women on the move, have the felt experience of migration as their baggage, and far from asking them to abandon it completely, that we recognise it as part of a history that is worth including in new narratives of the nation too. That's me.
Because in order we can record and broadcast. Then I maybe start because I have questions. And firstly, I'm on your side thinking about the body and the meaning of the body, but
So, good morning, everyone. I've been told that those who are online can also hear me. This is a panel that is called I Am Refugee, and it's a panel about autoethnography. And we have 4 speakers, of which 2 are online and 2 are offline. And we will start with online presentations. Great. Yeah, so I see now messages in the chat. I will say 2 technicalities about the time. So each speaker will have 15 minutes for presentation and then up to 10 minutes for discussion. And I'm a strict moderator, so I will interrupt and pass over to the next speaker when the time is when the time is over. The second technicality is if there will be any trouble with connection for online speakers, please try switching off the video. Yeah, so that's the first option. Also, Valeriia, I have your presentation just in case but it will be more convenient if you demonstrate it and share the screen, and then you will autonomously switch the slides. Okay, and then Margarita, we are awaiting another file from you, or you can also share the screen and demonstrate. So there are two options. Please let us know. Tania Arcimovich will be checking her email for the renewed version of the file. So, many technical details, right? I think we can proceed then to our first presentation. And our first presenter is Valeriia Vershynina. Valeriia is Executive Director of the Charitable Foundation Stabilization Support Services. If I'm not mistaken, it is active since 2016, and it supports internally displaced people. And dealing with problems of IDP is the main area of expertise of Valeriia. Valeriia was also co-creator of educational games about IDP experiences. And she is also a co-author of strategies for integration of internally displaced people. And as far as I understand, Valeriia is also speaking, being in Ukraine now. If not so, please correct me. So, Valeriia, the floor is yours.
Hello, colleagues. Thank you for giving me possibility to present this paper. I just want to clarify, do you see my presentation on screen right now?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, thank you very much. So yes, today I will speak a little bit about role of IDP councils in local democracy and community support in Ukraine through gender perspective and through influence of the possibility of the labor for the women who are displaced in Ukraine. Sorry, one moment. Yeah, so I really want to start from the context just to give you a general picture of the situation. Ukraine facing ongoing human crisis like the last 10 years. And before 2014, Ukraine have no any legislation, any practices how to work with internal displacement. We have no internal displacement in our new history. So in 2014, government like start from the scratch from development law about IDPs development policies for support. But unfortunately, all these processes need like really huge time. So in 2014, many of people just lost access to the social services for the citizens' rights. They move into the country, and mostly they move in the 5 regions. It was Donetsk, Lugansk, Kharkiv, Zaporizhia, Dnipro regions, and other big portion of IDPs moved to the Kiev region because it's capital of Ukraine. So it was like a huge movement of 1.5 million people in 2014. But in the next few years, conflict was frozen, and many government officials believe that Ukraine have possibility to integrate IDP or work with occupied territory and through diplomatic ways back this territory. So actually there was no some preparation for the other waves of displacement. And when in 2024 Russia full invasion happening, and there was already more than 5 million internally displaced people in Ukraine, and according to the OCHA statistic, actually more than 8 million people move in and like faced with forced displacement. And all these people actually need social protection, need access for their citizens' rights, need some solution for their housing. So this is why for Ukraine so crucial to have sustainable strategy of how we can work with IDPs and how these people can be protected. So context of displacement, I think you see that it's all happening like in the 10 years, and amount of IDPs increasing very much. So in Ukraine in 2019, we see the possibility to support IDPs at least realize their possibility in local democracy through IDP councils, like consultative bodies to authorities bodies. So how it's work? IDP councils collect IDPs who live in some gromada, in some community, and they have possibility to analyze local policies, to provide some advices, provide some recommendation, work with local government on their budgets, on their programming, and through all these activities have like in a loop for local authority, like needs of IDP. In the same time, IDP councils have possibility to participate in advocacy on the national level, like example with the Ministry of Reintegration, and provide some recommendations. So after 2020, IDP councils like work like really power tool to influence decision making and improve gromadas or like communities living conditions in Ukraine. Unfortunately, just after 2 years after establishing of IDP councils, full-scale aggression happening, so situation changed drastically. But in 2020, it was like idea that IDP councils will be created just in gromadas when we have more than 3 or 5 persons in IDP. So it was not thinking like a project for Ukraine. Model statute for IDP councils was created on the government level to ensure that all councils will work on the same level. But after full-scale aggression, there were no any city or any settlement in Ukraine which are now faced result of the war. There are no any settlement in Ukraine where we have no IDPs. So right now we have IDP councils all over the country. Over 800 IDP councils actively work, and more than 1,000 established but not work yet. And because of need to coordinate and organize work of so many entities, it was decided that in June 2024, we need to run like a mapping to make needs assessment of IDP councils to see how they actually work, and to see did this bodies really provide valuable influence on their gromadas? Do they provide support for gromadas and IDPs which we expect? And and what we see through this mapping, actually we see that this 840 IDP councils, they have regular meeting. They provide the gromadas with some recommendation, and they advocate for changes which actually influence on the real local programming. Like example, some local programs for social protection of IDP and other vulnerable groups was established in a local level because of IDP councils advocacy. So actually, very interesting thing what we see through this mapping, we see the gender aspects of IDP councils. The imbalance of power and resources between women and men, between position for paid and unpaid job. Actually, we can focus this vision through this mapping, because as we can see that from 840 for IDP councils, each go through the mapping, we see that majority of the participants of IDP councils is women. In all IDP councils participate 9,677 members, and 7,433 of them are women. And we see the same situation with the leaders' position in IDP councils. We see that majority of participants of the councils, of the head of councils, is women, and just 195 is a men's. So women leadership in IDP council, and it's really contrast with position when people can get some payments, because really, when we speak about IDP councils, this work unpaid, and sometimes representative of IDP councils even spend their own funding to have possibility to participate. So if we will compare this with, like example, officials work, we will see drastically changes. But what I told previously about results, about effectiveness of IDP council. So you can see that if we speak about programming in local areas, if we speak about support for the social protection, most of this work was done by the women's. And most of IDP councils have no any further resources, so they're not supported with some resources from the governments. They have no payments for their work. They have no any compensation. So it's fully like their active involvement done fully voluntary. And if we will speak about some challenges for the people who participate in IDP councils, some women who participate in mapping, they share the experience that their employee even not provide them with possibility to participate meeting without takes like the day off for their own expense. So really it's a big pressure for the woman to participate and to be actively involving in the processes of reintegration and support Gramada in their development. If we will compare this data with information about mayor's position and position in the Ukraine authorities, you will see that just 3 of 26 heads of Oblast state administration is women. So it's just 11%, and all other heads of Oblast administrations is a man. It's actually a highest position in the Oblast levels with the majority salary and majority resources. In city level, it will be just 8% of city mayors women and 91% will be the men. And if we will speak about villages, it will be 14% of the women in the mayor of the villages level, and 86 will be the men. So in rural communities show more progress. In rural communities, it will be 32% of the villages head being women, and still 68% on the men. So you see that participation of the women in the official decision-making processes is shaped like a pyramid. As lower level of power or pay, as higher will be proportion of the women representative. And if we will look on the numbers of the women participate in the IDP councils, you will see that it's very similar to some other statistic in Ukraine. Actually, it's statistic about women who work on official position category C and B in Ukraine. It's actually lowest position in our officials. So you can see that this pyramid shape is unfortunately integrated in our government very strongly. So it's actually will be the same for most years of Ukrainian independence, with slight changes for the last year. Actually, in October 2020, in Ukraine held the last local election. And in this local election, during this election, it was firstly initiated like 40% gender quota for the election. And it was first in Ukraine when political parties can't nominate the members, the deputy for the local councils without this gender quota. And because of this, the highest level of women representation in Ukraine local election, actually highest for all our history happening. And in 2022, it was in Oblast level 27.8% of the women was voting for the cities. and 34% it was deputies on the rural level. So you can see that still, even when it was the highest number for our history, it's still not equal with the man position. And unfortunately, after this, there was no any election further because of war. And you can think that because of war, because many men participate in the military, amount of women will be increasing. But it's not what happening, because in Ukraine we have ban for representative of local authority to move across the country. People who work in like a deputy in Gramadas, they can't move across the country. And because of this, many women left their position in the councils and decide to move across the country because of safety reason and for protection of their children. So we have situation when amount of men who can occupy positions start be less because of mobilization and conscription for the war, and in the same time amount of women who have experience and who have some practice in the work on this position start be less because they move abroad a country. So the gender imbalance in paid position indicates that women have few opportunities for career development and financial rewards for the leadership compared to the men. Unfortunately, it was not possible to find information about IDP women who headed local self-government bodies. And the same, I think that this happening just because we have no election. So because of this, IDP women not present beyond the mayors at all. At least this information are not present in the public pages. So in the case of unpaid work, women often assume a significant share of duties and responsibilities as in case of IDP councils, but this work remains in really should be recognized and should be supported by the government, because many IDP councils actually they faced with the IDPs in the first step of their displacement. They faced with the people who lost their homes, who lost their significant others, people who need consultation and who need to be referred for the professional providers of some social services, and mostly this work done by the women who participate in IDP councils. And mostly these women need to find balance between their like mother duties, between their like providers for their families, and between participation in IDP councils. And in the same time, these women need to be present in the labor market, because this is just one way to get some financial stability in Ukraine. We have no much payments for IDPs, so presentation on the labor market still extremely important. So what we see women who participate in IDP councils, who get some experience of work with local budgets, with programming, so the experience start be higher, but in the same time they have much less time and resources to participate in the labor market. And in many situations, unfortunately, they need to choose between possibility to work and possibility to engage in such social activities like IDP councils. And if we speak about our possibility to influence on this and support women in the IDP councils, I believe it's very important to recognize the roles of women and women organizations and IDP councils, provide them with systematical support, with training, and create opportunity to them to strengthen their skills. We need to create possibility to support women's lead organization in their collaboration with authorities and with IDP councils, and find a way to recognize support for unpaid labor on women in communities, support them into establishing local programs to support women in social protection, And actually, I want to highlight that we speak previously that majority of the people who participate in ADP councils is women, but if you will see on the programs each they choose for advocate support for ADP, there are no much space for actually women's initiative. Mostly they work with houses issue, educational issue, social protection for everyone. So I believe that sometimes even IDP councils who have majority of the women represent need to get help and focus on the women's needs and women's rights in the community and create products like create program each will be support women's fulfillment, because actually they have the biggest press and the biggest burn of this work on them. So I believe that foster cooperation between IDP councils, women organizations, local authorities, and donors should provide such support for the women who work in IDP councils. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Valeriia, for this empirically rich presentation. We now have up to 7 minutes for questions and answers. And please use microphone if you have any. And there is a first question from Olga. Yeah, Valeriia, you can stop sharing the screen so that we would see you.
Thank you, Valeriia. It's a very interesting presentation. My name is Olga, and I work in gender studies at the University of Gothenburg. I'm really fascinated by this because it's a bit of a, this grassroots political mobilization that we can observe from these IDP councils. But I'm not sure whether I missed it or you didn't speak about it. What is the function of these IDP councils, what they do, what level of, as I understand, they have, you said, some projects, but how they work and how they actually also communicate with decision makers. And then, do you know anything about motivation of these women who participate in the IDP councils? Because you say yourself that it requires a lot of efforts. And I think it's very important that because they see the meaning of this work, so I wonder what you know about that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It really was very hard to include everything in 50 minutes because I'm personally IDP myself, and I tried to put everything as possible because I believe it's very important that right now we have this tool. IDP councils create on the base of law of Ukraine about consultative bodies. Actually, according to this law, each authority like city council, regional council, or oblast council or oblast administration can create such bodies like expert and consultative body, and it means that this body have obligation and right to analyze project drafts of the local documents, like example document, resolution, programming, so everything that this, like example, city council or oblast administration plan to approve on the area of the competence of this body. And after that, they can provide some recommendation or draft some project resolution for such council. And we have situation, like example, in 2020, many IDP councils analyze statute of their gramadas to just identify gaps that these gramadas allow social benefits just for the people who register their residence in this gramada. And IDP councils advocate put in these documents just through comma one word IDPs to get possibility for IDP get the same resources, get access for the same programs like locals. And it was very important because on the start of the war, we have no such right. And if local programming, like example, provide some service just for people with local registration, it means that if you work migrant or if you IDP, you have no possibility to get access for the service. And it was very important change for gramadas. And after that, many IDP councils, they like example, they analyze local programming with a housing solution. and try to recommend to the Gramada concentrate on some of durable solution for housing. And I actually want to provide one more example from Lugansk region. Unfortunately, this territory right now fully occupied, but in 2021, IDP Council of Lugansk region make majority needs assessment for IDPs to see that labor program in Lugansk region was designed for IDP without high education. So many programs was designed for people who get like lowest level of the job for lowest money. But needs assessment shows that majority of IDP have one or two high education. They have like diploma of the masters, and these people tell that they will not work with position like odd jobs man or something like this, and they actually evaluate possibility to migrate for other region, neither go for odd job position. And because of these findings and because of this advocacy activity, labor program was changed and government stopped spend money for this. Because if you make your government programming with the wrong perspective, you never will have a good result. So I think that it's like first part of my answers about like what IDP Council is doing, and other question is actually why. Actually, for me personally, it was very important question, because when my colleague start tell about interesting experience of councils of affected population from Colombia and council in exile in Georgia, we discuss how we can use this experience in Ukraine. First, my arguments was that maybe it will not work, because many of the women who displaced, like in the first half of the year, we live in survivor mode. We need to find like money for rent housing, we need to send our children to the school, we need to find some paid job. So how I can find some time in my life to do this? And after that, actually answer for what we find, that people who just go through social adaptation maybe will not participate IDP councils at all. But people after this like first 6 months who want to integrate, who want to have possibility influence on their Gramada, who want to feel themselves like a part of Gramada, they're interesting to participate IDP councils, because this how we feel that these Gramadas are really ours. This how we feel that these Gramadas are really hear us. And actually sometimes if you can understand what you want to change, you can find others who are interested in this and work with you. So many IDPs who are interested in some housing durable solution, they go to IDP councils to work on housing program. And actually, I remember right now a very interesting example from Zaporizhia. One of the women in Zaporizhia participated IDP councils with one bright idea. She tells that her child have disability, she's a deaf, and she tells that learning programs not adapted for the children with the deaf, because they have no sign language, but have just subtitles. And she tells us that children with the deaf actually can't read subtitles so quickly. For us, it was a very new idea. Unfortunately, no one of us know nothing about this in 2021. So she initiated this discussion, even because of IDP Council strong advocacy, sign language was added for majority of educational program in Ukraine. And according to the Ministry of Education, right now, sign language is mandatory for all national online educational program. So it's very strong achievement. It was done because of one woman who found her resources to come, explain, and advocate for these changes.
Thank you for the question and for extensive answer. We now have to proceed to the next presentation, but yeah, let's thank Valeriia. And now we are proceeding to presentation by Margarita Korzoun. Margarita Korzoun is a project manager and business analyst, also producer, art manager, university teacher, and independent researcher. And Margarita has a background in physics, but then also has MBA in cultural and social studies and financial management. I still don't know whether Margarita will demonstrate slides herself or...
Hello, I'll try to do it. I will need your help. Let me try. I'll do it from a phone because I'm traveling now. So there is some difficulties because of it.
Or because I got your file.
Yeah, so we can also try to use the file that you have sent to us.
This one.
Dzienniki будуть бачити? So, Margarita, now I'm sharing your presentation, so everyone who is offline can see it on the screen. Those who are online, I think, can see it as well. I will be able to switch the slides, so please just say me next slide and I will switch the slide.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So, my presentation, yes, let's start from the first one. The name of my presentation is No Hope, Single Mothers, Migrants, SNU, Precariat. And it is an autoethnography case from Batumi, Georgia. Next one, please. Yeah, it's me and a child. It's Mark. He was 3 years old when we went to Batumi. And we lived there 1.5 years. And the first point was when I start to think about that experience was how to survive with a small child without any job there, what to do, where to live, what to eat. And now, after a year rethinking it, I went to autoethnography as a method to rethinking, of rethinking and to presenting that experience. And next slide, please. You know, there are 3 components in the method, in this method. The first one is auto, when the researcher is the research tool. Just now I have even I have a child ahead, and sometimes maybe I tell him something. Бегом, прячься. Yes. And the second component is ESNA, and it is about understanding greater cultural phenomena outside and beyond ourselves. And the second component is graphy, how to describe your experience, how to describe these cultural phenomena around, and how to tell about it. So storytelling, the form of presentation, is very important. Next one, please. Oh, stop, please. So when I present the method, I'd like to speak about the case. So at that moment, in February 2022, I was a university teacher in Belarusian State University. And when I went in February to Batumi with my friend, she was ill and asked me about for support for moving her to Batumi. I thought that maybe I'll continue my job online and it will be okay. And I'll found a kindergarten there in Batumi, and that will be also okay. But reality was very far from my thoughts. It was very cold when we came to Batumi. It was a very small room in Orbi City when we lived with Mark and my friend for 1 year and a half. And my job was immediately stopped because it was impossible to do it online because Ministry of Education rejected it strictly. And what to do? The first point, how to live, what to eat, how to take care about child, and usually such question is do it by yourself. Help yourself by your own. And I started to look for information. Any communities, formal, informal, which can help me to undertake these challenges. And I found Moms of Batumi Telegram group, very, very, very active, very, very, very useful, and made by earlier reluctant mothers. And you know, Batumi is near sea, and all children was concentrated there, and we speak to each other, shared experience, and found a better kindergarten, and speaking about job and help to each other. And such way brought me to ABF, Batumi organization. But that very strong and hard experience without any possibilities to job there gave me understanding what I feel, how to feel others, what I help them. Next, please. And I thought, I spoke. Я буду искать, и спрячься еще раз, пожалуйста. I thought about other solo moms and spoke with them, and that gave me such formulation of solo moms' difficulties. And I understand more and more that both childcare and migration become additional exclusion factors due to the barriers they create for single mothers, for their careers, for their professional development. I can't do my job as manager there in Georgia. I did not know Georgian. I can't find any online job because I have a small child with me, and he extremely ill with these climate changes. And I start to feel me impossible to work. And I formulate on that slide such exclusion factors. Maybe other moms' experience will add something to that, but from childcare side, it's often time more than 3 persons. additional payments for child needs, and very, very strong for me psychological factors. Just also, as now you see, always to be to be online with child, always speak with him, always taking care and help him. And from migration side, it was double documents, all passports. We left Batumi because we had to change his passport. And now we can't go there because we did not have a permission to go abroad from his father. And that cultural differences, I can't find a job because I don't know Georgian, and I can't find online job because I don't have time to look for it. But in reality, I did a lot of attempts to find online job in international organizations in Georgia or in Belarus or in
Connected. I suggest that we wait for 2 minutes at least. She's connecting. Margarita, can you hear us? I can see that you connected again, but we don't hear you yet.
Okay, do you hear me now?
Yes, we now hear you, and there is still this...
Yeah, next slide, please.
Yeah.
Yes?
Next slide,
please.
okay.
Okay. Yeah. So all the difficulties resulted in unhappiness and understanding that my professional way was stopped. It was very, very painful for me. And I felt me on the way to precariat, on the way to unprofessional job. And I tried to find any job possible, for example, to teach, to translate any tours, to make tea ceremonies or sound healing, some like that, because it was more possible for me than any other. And it brought me some money for living. A real job for my qualification. Next, please. My way to the professional development started from connection to people, to different people. That's why I decided that it's very important to participate in networking events. And it was great that such some organization is Georgia took care about solo moms in such way. And that means they included to budget of their events, transportation, accommodation, food, special space, care, and activities for children during such networking events. Next, please. And I'd like to present, and I'd like to present an experience of three organizations in Georgia. That means ABF Georgia in Batumi, Interactia Foundation, and Office of European Expertise and Communication. There is a link under Interactia logo. It is an article about the experience of networking events, including needs of solo moms. I will, and in my presentation, I would like to speak more about ABF experience. Next, please. As you know, maybe you know that ABF originally is Sweden organization. It's about study circles for adults, for workers. And ABF in Batumi has own small space, and I was happy enough to find them very quickly and to offer them to organize circles for moms with children. And there is, you see a list of that activities which was grown from one small circle for mom with children from 2 to 5 years. There is absolutely volunteer experience, and maybe next, please. The main results of that circles was that moms met each other, can help each other, exchange information, important information about children, and have his own time with their own children. And then just some photos about ABF study circles. You see, next, please. Educational activities for children. Next, please. Next, please. And also we start some activities not only for children, but for moms. And sharing things and books and toys. Next, please. And going outside for picnic, for any outside activity. And please go to conclusion. Next slide, please. Just some point I mentioned at the presentation. Childcare dramatically affects careers, opportunities, and happiness in migration. And because of it, there are exclusion factors from professional life and professional development. They are listed above. As a result, single mothers become unhappy, overworked, and losing motivation and hope. So there was a title of my presentation, No Hope. But it was not very strict, because any time with children, there is always happiness. And I presented some successful Georgian cases. Thank you a lot. Sorry for such noise. We'll be happy to answer your questions.
Margarita, thank you for your presentation. We now have 7 minutes for discussion, up to 7 minutes.
Okay.
So if there are any questions, please use microphone to ask. And I see there is a question from Tania.
Yeah, thank you, Margarita, very much for your presentation. And because, of course, like during the Thursday and today, I think, and in my presentation, I will mention like women with children as a special group, vulnerable group. But thank you that you like detail this case, because it's very important, especially for those who do not know, like the whole space around and inside. And maybe I do not have a question, but just a comment that I mean, just to encourage you to continue. And I think it's very, very important, not only because I understand completely as like this topic can be somehow a therapy also to even for yourself, just to show that you can stay in profession, in intellectual work and intellectual space, but at the same time it's very essential to move it further, to show, to demand, like to show these needs and to demand, I mean, special conditions. And it was actually a reason we asked in our questionnaire, do you travel with children? But to be honest, I think that since I am a single mother with the child, it is a reason this question is in this like questionnaire. And for me now it's really important, and just also to, again, if we speak about this gender balance and right, so it's important without this. And yeah, I mean, it's not a question, but just that I am with you, and please continue on. And yeah, it's all is possible. So again, this unhappiness can be a resource, a source, you know, to be stronger. Yeah, most like stronger and stronger, and not only for your own, but like to change something, because we really need this change. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Thank you. I'm very, very touched.
Any further questions? Because I have a question, and it is about activities by ABF that you have mentioned. So I was wondering which kind of people, which kind of parents are also there. So there are small kids as far as I understand. But then we know that probably if it is ABF, which is organization with Belarusian background, most of the people who participate in activities are also from Belarus. And we know that migration from Belarus to Georgia is very, very diverse. So people go there for different reasons. Could you probably just describe shortly what is the age of these people, their occupation, from which professional spheres do they come? If you have such a picture, I can also imagine.
Just from my own experience, mainly it was young families with 1 or 2 or 3 children, and the most from IT sector because of relocation, and usually father was working, and mothers stayed with children, and mainly mothers were also from IT sector, mainly, maybe 60% in my opinion, but they can't work because of children. And there also were some people, how to say, after 2020, and some solo moms can't found any job. So they work as cleaner, as babysitter, something like that.
Benefits of this networking, because I can imagine that many parents, like after coming to Georgia and then discovering this activity, probably the experience of life in Georgia changes. So the question is, how do people actually get to know about activities of ABF? Like, do
Telegram
people
channel.
come there? It is a Telegram channel, okay.
And Instagram and mouse by to mouse.
Then just like a following thing is, what do parents usually discuss when they meet? What are the main topics of conversation there? Apart from talks about children, because I think children are the main topic.
Yes, it was a key. It was a key. Children, but also professional development, or some conditions for living, where to live better, where to buy product, where to travel, and how to manage some situation, healthcare, children education. And I'd like to say that we became friends and still in contact.
Thanks. Thank you for this presentation and for the discussion. We now will have to proceed to the next presenter. So I will stop sharing this presentation. Yeah, but please feel free to stay online with us and participate as well. And I'm inviting here Amil Samar, and I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing the name. Amil is the chairperson and founder of the organization Better Future, and it is a Georgian organization and the first woman-led Georgian organization that is the refuge woman. So Amil has a refugee background as well, and you also have background in education, and your bachelor degree is in elementary education and teaching, and is complemented by non-formal education from University of Oxford in refugee studies. And you have collaborated with organizations like UNHCR. I think everyone, or almost everyone, have heard of it. Yeah, and now let's launch your presentation.
Thank you all for being with me today, or being with you all. And I really appreciate this opportunity to participate in this international conference. And this, what you saw now, I call it the moments of Abbas. Before I talk about my journey as a single mother, with small kids, to start my journey 9 years ago, to become the first refugee woman lead organization in Georgia. I would like to share what you saw now. I hope you will love it. It was started by volunteer work, and I would love to say that when I mention volunteer work, you must believe in vision. And when you believe in vision, you can make other people believe, and they will start to collaborate with you. So the idea is that I have a vision, that I'm not a burden, I'm a partner in progress, and I want to help support the citizens in Georgia to build the country. And I always have the same feeling like every other refugee woman, that we're facing some hard time, and I believe that we need to support each other to uplift each other. So the idea is that I believe inside my heart about the vision, and I start to communicate with people. So it was very strange. Of course, nobody believed about this vision, because when you are the first, they think even it's not legal to lead organization. So they start, of course, discourage you, say we can't, we can't make it. So let me tell you, every woman told me they can't. This was refugee and immigrant women. I start to look inside them and find the strength point. Encourage, appreciate, working hard to build the project and give them confidence, like they feel that they can do it. And let me tell you that we managed to make 10 projects, and I managed to collect 100 volunteers in 2023. we managed to make support for 2,000 persons. As you saw, we made several projects, and when I remember that now, these people, when they told me that we can't do it, I would love to always to show them these videos that we managed to do it. This idea, I'm sharing this story to understand there is so many challenges, invisible challenge. You will face it as a refugee, as a woman, as the idea of creating something new. It was new. No one did it before. I was the first refugee-led organization until this moment. No one has the same title, leading organization. So the idea is that when we manage to do it, after that, of course, we get thanks, we get funding. We're leading other projects with collaboration with international organizations, the other organizations as well, and we supporting refugee, Ukrainian, Humanitarian, stateless person, and migrant, and also we love to integrate, and we always try to support also Georgian as long as we can. So the story starts, let's say, back to 9 years ago. When I arrived in Georgia, as I said before, I was completely lonely. I was carried to children. I am widow, single mother, have nothing. I even start to contact directly with UNHCR, and they take me to living camp. I lived in camp in 2 years, for 2 years in my life. And when I remember these hard things, I don't feel sad. I feel these challenges build me. So I see this opportunity to understand how it's hard to be in this moment as a single mother, and always try to give hope for other people facing the same experience. That if I can do it, and I pass it, and I'm now a leading organization, you can do it as well. So I love to share hope. Let me tell you about what I faced. First of all was language barrier, of course, unfamiliar system. We don't know even where we can work, how we can apply for children, for school. Even when we start to know about these things, you will find yourself with one lovely thing called, now I'm alone, and the children finish school at 1 o'clock, my work finished at 7 o'clock. And as I'm a single mother, I don't even can work part-time. I need to work 2 times full day to manage to survive. So it was really hard time. So let me tell you, I got fired from, I think, like 50 work only because one reason. One, you can't bring your children after school. And I need to bring the children because no place to go. 2, we can't accept that you leave your work because your child is sick. And I must care about my child. 3, we don't accept that you bring the children during the summer time. And my children have a summer school and a summer kindergarten time. What I do? So I start to be fired from one by one. And only because reasons, nothing related about my cleaver. Nothing related about me. Even when I was sick, I remember that I was fighting with the garden in camp because they told me, you are sick, we called emergency for you, you can't go to work. I said, I'm a single mother, I can't be sick. This was not even an option for me. I always feel that I must carry my responsibility. But let me tell you something. I don't think that it was hard or bad to remember these things, because I felt without all these things I will never manage to grow. And growing personally and professionally is a very important thing for everybody. And let me tell you what kind of work I worked. I worked as a cleaner, I work as a cooker, I sell the flat, I work in tourism. I work even in a hostel. I work in a hotel. And I was officially, all my life, I finished education in university as a teacher for social studies. So I completely shifting my career. Even after I worked hard until I recognized my certificate from university officially being recognized by the Georgian government. I totally appreciate. But when to come to reality, to start work, you need to be fluent in the language of the country. So, okay, wonderful. Even if I worked hard, I can't manage to be this fluent that fast. So you need to work to survive. And this moment of my life called survive, keep going to survive. I didn't focus at the moment, honestly, when I'm telling you this to personal growth and development and this thing is, no, I just was telling myself, keep going, keep going. And I was thankful for everything. I think it was really my power. I was feeling everything with happiness. I didn't feel, by the way, that my kids' responsibility was hard thing in my shoulder. I felt always that this was my power and my sunshine to keep going. And this attitude gives me some kind of power every single day when I go through my life. Then, one day, let me tell you about collecting a point. Now I understand that was good. After this fired, one day I started fired after 1 hour of working. And honestly, it was, I remember they called me because my daughter suddenly gets sick or something like you need to come directly to school. And I was just a new job, so they fired me. We don't have this kind of system, we don't have contract, we don't have agreement. You're just even working with less week because you have a language barrier and you need some kind of flexibility regarding the work. So you have a problem for your child, go, leave the work, finish. And now, when I remember this, I'm really happy that they fired me. Let me tell you why. In this day, after I finished, I went to ask for kind of support, financial support with UNHCR. And they lead me for World Vision, and I really appreciate them, by the way. I'm working with them 6 years now, and I appreciate. When I remember this case, I always feel my heart was thankful. They told me that I need to ask for World Vision to ask for this financial support. And in this moment, they was starting a new project called Community Mobilization. And without I know, they made an interview for me, and I have been selected. And from this moment, my life started completely be different from survival to be going through personal development and professional development. Let me tell you, they start to offer for me so many capacity building. I finished all. They start to offer me that I can learn. And when they open for you the door to learn, you need to decide. You have work, you have a family, but you have something inside your heart that you want to grow. So I challenge myself every year to finish 20 courses and to get certificate from them. After that, they go another level. University of Oxford start UNHCR sent for me that you can apply for this as well. UNHCR give me this link for University of Oxford, giving refugee and migrant studies. And I applied, I made an interview with them, and I have been selected. Guess what? I finished, I got certificate. I even was one of the guest speakers in the celebration about ceremony, about in the ending of in this course. And this moment called happiness for me as well. And then I didn't stop. The idea is that I have a passion inside me that learning is a power, knowledge is a power. And I keep looking for all kinds of opportunity to participate, to just keep learning. Sometimes I remember my daughter, she is very small, she's telling me, Mom, why you keep study all the night? You already in work in the morning, then you care about us. Why you need more? What will you take from that? Honestly, for me, at the moment, I only told her, I have hope. Hope is great power, can lead you even in the hardest moment in your life, can give you some time that in everything was dark, I managed to see some light, and that was hope. I have a hope for better future. Not better future only for me, better future for my community, my family, my children. I want for them better, and I can't do this better without learning and development myself and keep growing. Then I was the first refugee woman have been selected to participate in summit in Germany, and in Global Refugee Forum in Switzerland, and in Migrant Human Rights in Netherlands, and now I'm here also. I'm the first refugee woman in Georgia, but managed to participate in all this global and international conference. So the idea now that I'm sharing my story, I don't want to say that it was a challenge. I just wanted to say that hope and resilience can always bring doors for you. So when you're facing a hard time during life, remember that hope can lead you to find a door for yourself, for your life, and now I have a big dream to support the community, and I will never give up until I manage to do bigger projects to support more people and create better future for them. I appreciate this. Thank you so much for listening to me today, and thank you.
Thank you, Amal, for this very inspiring and motivating presentation. And we now opening the floor for questions and answers. We have 8 minutes again. I see Tania has questions.
Yeah, thank you very much. I have 2 questions. Firstly, how much time did you need? I mean, like this transition time to get this feel that you can, to overcome maybe frustration and other feelings. And the second question is, do you have this feeling that your story is somehow exclusion? I mean, like really exclusion, that you did it and you overcome all these real circumstances, what most of the women, generally refugee, experience, because probably like much more number cannot. Maybe you can develop it a bit.
Thank you so much for this question. About the time, exactly, the moment I felt that I completely broke, not by money, broke inside me, that I completely lost, the life destroyed me. It was the moment that I felt I'm completely strong. Because sometimes when you face this hard things, you have 2 ways. You can follow and just destroy, or you can face it and you change completely to another person. And I remember this moment, it takes, I don't know exactly how much time, because it takes process. It was not one day. It keeps break me, and until one day I felt that, no, I am strong enough. I passed all these things, so I can do it more. So another question about, yes, they now, many people know me in Georgia. They said I'm an example of hope, especially the people who lived with me in this camp and remember me when I wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and carry my kids. I was the only woman who traveled all the day. The camp was so far from the country, so I wake up 5 o'clock, carry my kids, travel for the city to go to put them in the kindergarten and the school, and start to work, and then travel again back every single day. So I was the only woman who did it. Even people in this moment, they was always discourage me. Like they don't feel that I'm making something. They feel like, oh, you are a woman with 2 children. Of course you can't do nothing. Now, after 9 years, when they meet me, you was always different. And you managed to do something. So when I remember how they talked to me 9 years ago, and today when they meet me and they telling me that I'm an example of hope, I always feel, okay, it takes so much time, by the way, it takes hard work from me, but I'm happy for that. So, thank you so much.
And then I also have a question.
Thanks. Thanks for this presentation. And I just wanted to ask, what was your experience with the Georgian government, and how much support it gives to refugees in the country? Because I haven't heard much about like any refugee programs, for example, there. So is it actually existent, and where can refugees in Georgia get help, if not from the government, then maybe from non-governmental organization from outside international organizations and so on?
Thank you for this question. It's really important. Now I remember to say something very important. Without help from Georgian people to help me to integrate inside the society, without help from Georgian government to give me this draft document, I can travel here. Without this kind of help from international organizations like World Vision, UNHCR, even Human Connectors, they are my role model in Europe, who inspired me and helping me. Without help from all these things together, I would never be here today to tell you a story. No one ever go alone. Even they can go alone, they will go not much. They can go with limit. So if you see someone coming here, traveling aboard, and coming to tell you a story and manage to do something, you need to know there is so many people who was beside this story. And I really here to appreciate that Georgian people, Georgian society, helped me to integrate me and my kids. I don't feel, by the way, any kind of hard thing. I am one of the people who working under World Vision, is an international organization to support refugees in so many projects now, like 6 years. World Vision, this international organization. I also working there, and they have several projects from UNHCR, even they support me as a refugee-led organization. So I am here to not because I was smarter or more potential. I'm here because so many people worked hard to support me, and I appreciate all what they did for me. Thank you.
I have a question, and it is about activity of the organization Better Future. So it does a lot, as I understood from context, to help refugees to adapt to the circumstances and to the context. But does it also advocate any changes in the rules or practices of treatment of refugees, or maybe any legislation changes? Is it among your activities or among your goals?
Always, when you're leading organization and you are the first, you need to always have this part of advocacy. So whenever I go, I must advocacy for a changing narrative that we are not a burden, we are partner, and I always talk about this in real practical words, as long as I check what we really need to do at the moment. Because society have a needs, community have a needs. We need always to check what they need and to start talk about it. That's how advocacy works. But if I just say it, okay, I'm advocacy, about what? We need to check always. The community need what, and if this really can be done, and if it's not done, why? We need to keep going through this process, and very important thing, need to be patient advocacy. Nothing can come in one day. If you want to make some changes, you need to keep following and keep in process and keep growing and be patient.
So were there any changes implemented since the start of your activity? Like, could you give an example, maybe, of,
yes, of course.
A law that
I
was
told
changed
you.
to practice?
Let me tell you something. When we start, as you saw, we didn't start with any funding. So today I was talking with you, and I have already collaboration. I have a funding. I have a partnership. We're going through these things with progress. If we talk about the change, before I established this Better Future with no any kind of refugee woman-led organization, so it's kind of a change. You talk about other kind of a change, you mean?
As well, yeah. I think we can talk more about this during the break, because we now have to proceed to the concluding presentation. But before that, I'd like to thank you sincerely for this very insightful presentation.
Thank you all, and I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Okay. And now I'm inviting here Olena. Olena Solodovnikova is a Ukrainian international journalist and filmmaker, and also You're the author of a book collection of expert interviews, Disturbance Talks About Victory, and it has been published last year, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, in Ukrainian it's тривожні розмови про перемогу.
And Olena also held scholarships from renowned organizations in different countries, in Germany and Great Britain, also in Balkan countries, if I'm not mistaken, and in Eastern Partnership countries. And now the floor is yours, and I will launch the file now.
Yes, could you open these photos?
So you'll be showing photos from the folder. Yeah, sure. Yes.
Thanks all for having me here. First of all, I didn't dream to be refugee or immigrant in my life anyway. So the first opportunity when I face-to-face with emigration was my documentary about the Syrian people, which I produced in 2018, because that was the wave of Syrian immigration and in Ukraine. And I was interested in how these people replaced and to talk with them. And this, for me, that was absolutely new world, because I think that is some kind of Muslim with their traditions. They are absolutely different from Ukrainians, but as a result, that was absolutely similar problems as all people in the world, and how to care with their families, how to care their children, how to find some place, some roof under, and we made a friendship with these people. One family, the dancers, and after the Ukraine, they moved to Swedish and then to Canada. And I'm absolutely happy for him. And then the full full escalation started. The first people who sent me message was Syrian people who text me, if you want to have a house, we will give it to you at first. But in the first month I don't want to remove from Ukraine. I replaced the IDP to Chernobyl region for 2 months. That was enough for me and my family, and my daughter moved to Germany with her grandmother. That was my decision, and so that was different relocation, some relocation of my parents from Kharkiv to Germany too. And as a result, in fact, I have proposition from the Kosovar people. It's a PMF organization which provides residence in Kosovo Republic for journalists, for 20 journalists from Ukraine, and it was absolutely interesting for me to know how to Balkan states is inside. I've never been here, and I jumped to this opportunity, and in this moment I really needed, not as a journalist only, but as an ordinary person, because I need to have a light at all. And in this time in Kiev we started the lockdown started, and that's why I need to go. And the situation was, I start to find it, how to use it. That is the photo.
So let's make sure that it is shared to...
Yes, I have some photos from this residence where I have been to more than half a year. And first of all, that was try to do that in the Pristina, the capital of the Kosovo, to compare with Kyiv, that is a small town, but that is absolutely great people here, because they know what is the war, they had this example, had this experience 20 years ago, how to be the refugees. Probably half of the population of Kosovar people forced to move from the country and then back. And that's why when we come to Kosovo and we talk about that we are Ukrainians, they all say, okay, that is coffee for free for you, okay, you can be that, you can be my friend, and that is absolutely friendly. And of course that was some kind of not ordinary refugees at first. Back to it, please. Because we have the meetings with Albin Kurti, that is Prime Minister of Kosovo, and this is my daughter with him. And
one moment. Наступний раз не закривайте, клацайте, зараз покажемо.
We met with President Vershynina Ousmanova. By the way, the President of Kosovo is a woman. That is absolutely great. Yes, it's Albin Kurti, Prime Minister of Kosovo, and yes. Then we have a big, long interview with him, and that is his Pristina capital, and patriotic Kosovars who come with their flag, with the colors of this flag, the similar with Ukrainian flag. So that is the good sides of this refugee experience. We have all what we need, the payment for food, we have opportunity to work remotely, and the house, of course. But as for me, it was difficult to understand some traditions. It's not about the Muslims or not, because in Ukraine previously we have a lot of rumors because of the Kosovar people have strict Muslim traditions. That's why we need to be here. Like the Christian people are prohibited. That is absolutely bullshit, because they have a Catholic Church in Pristina, big Catholic Church. That is absolutely no prohibited about religion, but there are interesting and strange moments. For example, we go through the street with my daughter, 7 years old, and some people come to her and touch her and hug. I was shocked. Why do that? Or something. Some people come to us on the cafes and give my daughter money. I have said, we are not beggars, we are refugees, but we don't need it. And as a result, people told us that it's not something bad for us. That is tradition of them, because these people recovered during their war, and they are very, have a very strong feelings according to the small children, because they have demographic problems in their country. And as for me, the second problem was to find a specialist, for example, dentist here. That is because of after the war, the most people from the Kosovo Republic go abroad for working, and this tendency is keeping on here. And for example, it was a problem to find person who can repair my notebook. I have a problem here, and it's only one notebook in this country, and it is problem to bought new technique here, because they have a very high tax. It's probably 50% for technique, and that is some details which you don't understand at first, but when you come to country and stay here for a month, that is open for you. But I was very happy for supporting of Kosovar people, for their they were very open for me, and for my daughter, I need to add that she attended Kosovar school in English, which learned in English, but an Albanian language. And for her, that was very difficult to understand these new languages, because previously she was in Germany, and that was absolutely mixed up. And as a result, I said, thanks for Kosovar people, and back to my homeland in Ukraine, in Kyiv, because I do understand that we need to be inside Ukraine if we have this opportunity, if we have the house here. Yes, some of my colleagues stay in Kosovo because they are from the occupied territory and they have no any other options where they have to be. But all people in Ukraine, I think, if you have, I'm not, yes, of course, everyone can make their choice, but as for me, that is better when people stay in our land and continue to work for our country. And for example, for me as a journalism, as a documentary filmmaker, that is very crucial to be inside the country. Because when you stay remotely, you lost connections. You don't understand don't understand the thinking way of people inside the country, I think so. And to be Ukrainian journalist is exile is absolutely different to be Ukrainian journalist in country. And after that that is a photo with my colleagues, and Valeriia Ousmanova is the president in the center, the president of the Kosovo Republic. Of course, that is some moment in Drenica city, which is divided by Serbia and Kosovo, half of city, but that is political moment, and I will postpone it. That is a policeman here, and Albanian flag, and they are the symbol of Albanian and Kosovar people. Could we open here? As a result of,
we can try to share this window, right?
As a result of this refugee experience, I do understand that I need to start a new project about the global geopolitics and how another world perception of Ukraine. Because if we talk about Ukrainian question inside, we have the one view. In another countries, there is absolutely different, and that's why I started the project. Comments about the situation in another country and how they perceive us. And how to check it. Oh. And please, if you want, you can find my website, Ukrainian.media, which was launched after the move from Kosovo Republic, and continue to provide information not only about the Ukraine, but about Belarusian people, for example. That is an article about the situation with Belarusian passports and how people need should to be if their passport, Belarusian passport expired. So I know that there's many people from Belarus region, and my husband is Belarusian in exile from Kyiv. He's staying in Kyiv for 4 years. So if you need some information about the Belarusian youth, welcome. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Olena, for this presentation. And we now have our 8 minutes traditionally for questions and answers. I can start because I have never heard anything about current Ukrainian community in Kosovo, and probably you could just tell how do Ukrainian refugees decide to go to that destination? How large is this community? How connected it is? Maybe just a few words.
Yes, to be honest, the Ukrainian community in the Kosovo doesn't exist except of people, 20 people of Ukrainian journalist residents. They people changed, not all of them stay here all the time. And some people who I met was the family of diplomats, some people who stay here before the full war escalation. So this is a very small, not a diaspora, I think so.
Okay.
There is a question on the chat.
There is. I'm not sure that this is a question to this presentation because it was posted 13 minutes ago.
It's about Belarus migration something.
Yeah, the question is about researching deprivation. Maybe. Yeah. Okay. The next question.
Thank you very much for your presentation, I'm interested in this, your experience of doing this documentary with Syrian refugees and how you, why you became interested in them, and also how you, what kind of parallels you saw also in these experiences when the full-scale invasion in Ukraine started.
Okay, thank you for your question. First of all, I started to be interested in Syria at all because the war in Syria was on the television. That was the main point. And after that, I heard some kinds of rumors about that some people from Syria come to Ukraine, and that is problems with them. That is people who don't know anything about our customs in Ukraine, that is absolutely wild. And I said, probably it is not true. So I come to the organization which provides legal help for these people. They was absolutely disappointed because of Ukrainians' law, because our immigration administration that is awful, and it continued to be that. And then I have acquainted with some families which know Ukrainian, or some of people of this family know Ukrainian and can to speak, and one of them person is originally from Ukraine and he knows Arabian, and we connect with them, and that is started.
Do you know how many of them are in Ukraine now?
Is
there? Because
I
you've
have
mentioned
no
that
official
they're
statistic,
moving.
but I know that all of them try to go away from Ukraine because that is first of all, it is a second trauma for many people who move from Syria to Ukraine, and then they need to go the second part of the second war. They heroes of my film, they say that they are used to live on the luggage. They wanted to have a luggage every time because they are not safety in all country, not in Syria, in Ukraine. That is a problem.
There was a question.
I thank you for your positions, and thank you that you return to Ukraine and stay with us in Ukraine is very important for us for today. We will be stronger when we will be together. And what should be the recommendation to bring back our Ukrainian people after victory? After our victory, what is from your experience, from your life experience? What is important to not? What would you tell us for scientists, for local government, and so on?
Yes, thank you for your question. I think that is a more political and social question. Yes. The first of all, it's my opinion only. I think that Ukrainian authorities have to provide the good conditions for Ukrainian private entrepreneurs to low taxes, to make everything to make conditions for people who need to come from abroad. Because I know some people that is some kind of people who are very patriotic in Ukraine, but first of all they thinking about their families, and if they have good education, good schools abroad, and they first of all, and on another hand, they heard about that in Ukraine that is a problem with education, and we need to deal with it. Because you know that official statistic that more than half of people who have opportunity to learn free in Ukrainian university, they reject that because they wanted to, they have another chance to continue learn abroad. So we need to provide more good conditions for people, first of all, and there's a many options of that. But all in all, that is the biggest problem for us, for our authorities, that we make something difficult. Some difficulties is worse than in another country in Europe, for example.
But create conditions for better life is very costly, are very costly. And after victory, our Ukrainian will be very poor. I think so. And it will be. I ask about other unmaterial conditions for Ukrainian to bring back.
I don't agree with you that we have a biggest problems, because the biggest problems we have this brain drain, and the Kosovo the same situation. They have a brain drain, and that's why they now that is continuous stagnation during the 20 years. They try to deal with it, but so. And now we have this challenge in Ukraine. The main goal of Ukraine is not a land, it's not a coal, that is a people. That is a people, educated people, and we need good educated people in our country at home. I'm not against the people from another country, because now we have a discussion in Ukraine about that big migration of people from the Asian country, from the people of the Africa to Ukraine, to deal with demographic crisis, and to deal with problems with working class, but first of all Ukrainian people, and then from another world. We are open for all.
Great, thank you for questions and answers and for these presentations. We're closing on time, and I can announce lunch break now, and see you after this. Thank you.
So I would like to welcome you to this last panel called Immaterial Labor, Displaced Female Scholars' Experience. And we will have 3 presentations instead of 4, and all of them will be real life presentations. Yeah. And we will, each of the presenters have roughly 30 minutes for everything, for presentation and the QA session. I would like to start with the pleasure of presenting Olena Ostapchuk, who before Russia's full-scale war against Ukraine worked for 17 years at Zhytomyr State Ivan Franko University in Ukraine at the Department of Social Work, and Olena has a PhD in pedagogy. Her primary research and practice interest is gender studies. She is an expert on gender equality and gender budgeting. She has experience in expert and consulting work in international organizations such as the United Nations Population Fund, National Democratic Institute, DVV International, as well as long-term projects such as the Equal Opportunities Program and Women's Rights in Ukraine, Gender Responsive Budgeting Project in Ukraine, and others. She currently lives in Cologne, Germany, which is Köln in Germany. She has implemented the project workshops on creating baby toys for Ukrainian mothers and children displaced by the war abroad, and has also cooperated with Fern University in Hagen, where we have a common colleague, as it turns out. Okay, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. My name is Olena Ostapchuk, and for the past 20 years, I have been used to presenting myself as a university lecturer, gender expert, and public activist. However, since March 2022, following Russia's full-scale war against Ukraine, I have been a refugee. And at some point, it seems that this new identity cross out or overshadow all the previous ones which I have built up with a lot of experience in work. 17 years of work at Zhytomyr State University, dozens of successfully implemented projects in cooperation with international organizations, hundreds of training for various target groups. All of this is in the past. Your family, friends, your home are several thousand kilometers away, and ahead of you is completely unknown, enormous fatigue from worrying and sleep deprivation, foreign language, and a sole responsibility for the child. All you can do is take your suitcase in the one hand and your child in the other, and cross the border in search of safety. In March 2022, after Russian army bombed my 8-year-old son's school, I had to seek refuge abroad. For security reasons, I am currently living with my son in Cologne, in Germany, and my husband currently lives in Ukraine. My presentation will include elements of storytelling and reflective experience. I am grateful to organizers for the invitation. Thank you so much for your position that the voices of Ukrainian women are important and should be heard. The challenges which faced those women who were forced to leave their homes and families after Russia's full-scale war against Ukraine begin with the definition of who these people are, how these people are called. In the academic literature and in the media, we can see various concepts used in this case, including people who have been granted protection under paragraph 24, people displaced by war abroad, asylum seekers, refugees, externally displaced people, migrants, people with refugee experience, people under temporary protection. These terms are often used interchangeably, but in the real life, they have different semantic meaning. For many Ukrainian women, the term refugee was very traumatic from the psychological point of view, and the official is people who have been granted protection under paragraph 24, but in fact, refugees is common use. Ukrainian journalist Marina Korzoun, who had a repeated experience of displacement, first from Donetsk region and then from Kyiv region, due to Russia's military action against Ukraine, noted that Ukrainian women are not refugees, but rather live the life of refugees. In this way, she really emphasized one of the features of forced migration. What does this pack of pasta have to do with forced migration? In fact, it is my metaphor for the short planning horizon in the situation of forced migration. In reality, this packet will be enough for 1 or 2 weeks for one family. However, I, like many other Ukrainian women, who was hesitant to buy the next pack of pasta, we asked ourselves, in this purchase worthwhile, because we might to have go home, or we might to have to change our place residence, or to relocate. This uncertainty is very exhausting. The main challenges of forced migration of Ukrainian women include their effect uncertainty, short planning horizon, vulnerability, the guilt of survivor, distant relationships with relatives because husband or partners must be in Ukraine and are often involved in the defense of their state, and a lot of service work, sole responsibility for children and care for elderly relatives who are also now the responsibility of women alone. The dissonance lies in this fact that there is general expectation of host countries for rapid adaptation and integration of Ukrainian women against the background of their personal law resource status. I would call it the turbo effect. By the way, in Germany, the refugee employment program is called turbo job. Yeah. In fact, Ukrainian women displaced by war abroad have to learn the language quickly, find a job quickly, solve domestic difficulties quickly, find accommodation quickly, integrate quickly, and help their children integrate quickly to the host communities. However, it's difficult to do this against the background of constant long-term stress. First, you need to stabilize your living situation. There is a public demand for stories of quick integration, successful success, stories about successful success, based on 79 articles about Ukrainian refugees in 2 major German weekly newspapers, Der Spiegel and Die Zeit, between February 2022 and February 2023, authors Leslie J. Pruitt and Antje Mischbach conclude that the media portray an idealized image of Ukrainian refugees. Most publications portray only one type of Ukrainian refugee: educated, grateful, with pro-European values, and quick to find a job. Undoubtedly, such an idealized image can be useful, giving Ukrainian women a generally good attitude and perception. At the same time, the researchers warn against the risk of extrapolating this experience of the above mentioned type of women to all other, as those who cannot fit into this almost perfect category. For various reasons, economic, professional, or cultural, they may be excluded. Difficulties can be psychological in type, due in living under long-term stress, or institutional in origin, for example, the slow and complicated process of recognizing Ukrainian qualifications in Germany, or challenges of single parental young children, or, for example, caring for old parents, and others. The researchers point out that this discourse of ideal Ukrainian refugee women focused more on benefits that these women can bring to host communities and to host countries than on their urgent right to universal protection. I think it's very important point of view. Such a stereotype may influence migration and integration policies in general. In the view of forced migration, we also need to understand the context that Ukrainians are mentally very attached to their homes. Real estate in an asset they have, they often inherit. There is a strong emotional attachment. Therefore, the feeling of homesickness is another challenge, especially for those whose homes have been destroyed or are in the occupied territory. The photo shows busy toys made by Ukrainian mother and children as a part of an art therapy project. We did this project together with my colleague in Cologne. 200 people were able to make their own symbol of home. And really, we received so many positive feedbacks on this format. And for them, it was very important. Living in two countries during a war is like living in parallel reality. Thanks to modern technology, we can communicate with our families online, and this helps us to maintain our relationship. You can see as my son and his cousin try to kiss each other, but in reality they kiss only screen of phone. Yes. But on at the same time, thanks to the same modern technologies, when you are abroad, you can have access to information about the real-time situation in Ukraine, where the Russian army is bombing towns and villages, killing soldiers and civilians, destroying infrastructure. It is very difficult to concentrate, for example, on learning foreign languages at this time. Ukrainians are now living through the experience of not only maintaining relationship remotely, but also mourning the physical loss of relatives and friends who are killed by shelling and fighting. As a part of my cooperation with Fern-Uni in Germany, I had the opportunity to conduct activities with Ukrainian women as a trainer. And I would like to share one of my observations. I think that women's oral histories are important, especially in such turbulent times, because they tell us about different life strategies and examples of resilience and endurance. But a significant number of women do not consider their experiences to be valuable enough to talk about. They tend to undervalue this significant experience they have had. That's why activities, different forms and methods that help to reflect on one's experience are very important, as they provide an opportunity to notice this progress. Therefore, research on the oral history of refugee women, social projects with therapeutic writing practices and other reflective techniques are really relevant. Another feature of forced migration is war and migration plus. By plus, I mean other problems such as their own or their relatives' health. or the need to manage children's education not only in educational institutions in host countries, but also parallel distance learning in Ukrainian school. Ukrainian children are really simply heroes, as they overcome incredible difficulties at such a young age as a result of war and migration. At the same time, mothers are often the emotional containers who accept and share this experience and help them overcome stress. It's important to say that about civic engagement of women, tons of humanitarian aid for Ukraine is collected by Ukrainian refugees. This is their volunteer work. Also, for example, in Germany, there is a tendency to create NGOs headed by Ukrainian women. Despite all the challenges, Ukrainian women demonstrate resilience and endurance, master life in new reality, and they try to improve their professional skills and try to find jobs. That is why mentoring programs for improving the level of foreign language skills, psychological support program are extremely important. Among retraining programs, in terms of applied efforts and obtained result, the IT sector is the most relevant. Here's an example that confirms the huge demands for such trainings and retrainings program. In the summer of 2024, the Projector Foundation, with the financial support of European Union, announced a call for free online training in the creative and IT industries for Ukrainian women abroad and in Ukraine. The training project was aimed at an audience of unemployed women from among the internally displaced and women who have received temporary protection abroad. The women could choose from such areas as graphic design, internet marketing, IT project management, Facebook and Instagram targeting, and etc. And what is interesting that the Projector Foundation team noted that 11,500 applications were submitted for 300 vacant training places. That is about 40 applicants per vacant place. It's a huge demand. At the beginning of my speech, I said that at some point it seems that being a refugee seems to negate previous achievements. And this is a risk of being stuck in trauma. Applying Caroline Moser's concept of practical gender needs and practical gender interests, I would like to make the following points. Meeting practical needs for food, security, shelter are important, but without achieving strategic interests such as decent work or influence in decision-making, women will remain vulnerable. In the case of forced migration, measure and project to overcome trauma, make stronger career opportunities, retraining programs, and build support networks will be the strategic. I also personally believe in the power of mentoring and women's solidarity. Thank you for your attention, and thank you for supporting Ukraine.
Okay, now I open the floor for questions.
Thank you, Olena. Thank you so much for so great presentation. You mentioned that that visibility of these voices and oral stories from Ukrainian women are quite absent, so they are quite invisible. I can totally relate to this because both in academia and both in outside academia. So we have so many discussions about Ukraine and Ukrainians, but in so, as my humble observation, in so strange way. So in my opinion, we have underrepresentation of empirical reality from Ukraine and from Ukrainian perspective, and from Ukrainian, also from Ukrainian perspective, that Ukrainians experience both in Ukraine and abroad. And my question is very simple. What can we do? So do you see any special ways to increase this visibility, both inside Ukraine and outside Ukraine? So this is two different audiences. Mm-hmm. We can probably discuss only outside Ukraine, but yeah, it's...
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your interesting question. I think that it's very important to start to speak about this, because we should understand maybe some project or some networking can start to communicate with these women and show them that their history, their stories, their own truths are really important. And I think it's also a good idea to present this result. I don't know, as a small video, or maybe is as a story with some photos. We can think about this more. But I think that this interest is very important, and what I can notice more, that the time when we can do this is also important, because women after 3 months, woman who has 3 months experience of forced migration, and woman who has, for example, 6 months or 1 year or 3 years of this, will tell completely another experience. And even if we say about one woman and these different times, these times, that's why I think that it's important to start this kind of project as soon as possible. This is not only, but maybe I can see this. We can do it easy. Really, we can do this easy. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Other questions or comments? Then I have. Thank you very much. It was a great presentation, and I have some comments and a question, but I want to say that I really appreciate that you bring up this critique of this, that there is only one particular story is visible in German media, for example, of this deserving migrant, the one who is pro-European, pro-democratic, yes. Benefits German society.
Very successful.
Yeah, and it's a very good critique, because I think it has very dangerous consequences, and especially what you say yourself about this turbo program, and was it you or someone else raised this, that you are expected to start working very fast, but when you are so stressed, yes, because of the experience you have, it's not very easy for you to think about a job and other things, and with promoting such images, it really contributes to these anxieties. Yes. And I wonder, to which extent it's only German media, because I think also some diasporic Ukrainian scholars also contribute a bit to this picture, emphasizing this, look, these are good refugees, they deserve to be included, and so on and so forth. Yeah, so I think it's, how do you see this? Is it only Westerners who do this, or people from diaspora, or some more privileged people from Ukraine also contribute to this image?
It's a very interesting question, and what I can say now, what I see, I think that this idealized image of Ukrainian women can give a lot of challenges for other migration. For example, not so idyllic image. For example, they can have, of course, on the one hand, Ukrainian women very have good education. They have high level of the education, and about 70% of women who are refugees in Germany, they have high education. You can imagine that it's very high. But on the other hand, I think that the main risk, and I completely agree with these researchers, that the main risk is connected with it's not all women, not all Ukrainian women are in this idyllic situation, yes, which have with successful success stories, and that's why I think we should give more for diversity. And understood that a lot of people can have different scenarios, different strategies, and different problems. For example, if you speak about me, with my husband in Ukraine, we have a partnership, very good partnership in our family, and that's why I had more opportunities to build my career. For example, now, if we speak about Germany and my situation in Germany, I should care about my son alone, and it's complete. And that's why I have completely different career chance in this point of view. And of course, not only I speak not only about myself, but I am only thinking about other Ukrainian women who have a lot of challenges now in host countries. That's why it's important. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Other questions?
Thank you very much. And my question is, do you plan to stay in academia, or do you see any chance to?
What are you doing?
No, sorry, but actually I will speak about this, and it's my project, and yeah.
It's a very good question, because from time to time I ask myself about this question, and on the one hand I can say yes, but on the other hand, really, for these 2 years I feel so much frustration that I am not sure that now I am good as a scholarship, really, because I was busy with different situation and cases and etc. That now I understand that I think I need more support for staying in this position, and maybe I can go, or I stay in this position, or I can go to project management, because it's also my sphere. But if we speak about other women, they also think a lot about retraining program, and they at the same times they are ready to start with the 0 level. It's difficult, but if you, for example, if you speak about new sphere, completely different, because for me it will be not so different sphere. It will be or academia or project management and cooperation with the international organization. I think now about this, but for me to stay in academia, it's a more big challenge than go to project management. Yes, it's true. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I would like then to present Almira Ousmanova. So I will start with presenting, and okay, but in the meantime I will try to open another presentation. Yes, and Almira Ousmanova is a philosopher, cultural theorist, and gender scholar. She is a professor at the Department of Social Sciences and coordinator for Center for Gender Studies at the European Humanities University here in Vilnius, Lithuania. Her research interests include feminist philosophy, social epistemology, and gender representations in visual culture. So, you're welcome.
Thank you, Olga. Well, as you see, the title of my presentation is Dis/Placement, Dislocation, Disengagement, with a question mark, Feminist Reflections on the Production of Knowledge in Exile. As Olga, when introducing me, said that I'm interested in the study of politics of knowledge and that is of social epistemology, actually this question on the production of knowledge has been interesting for me for quite many years, but certainly during the last 4 years it took a new direction, and that's what I'm going to talk about in my paper. Again, yesterday Olga already quoted Donna Haraway, and we spoke about situated knowledge, and I would like just to remind some of the key ideas, because it's really important for the topic which I'm presenting. So according to Donna Haraway, all knowledge bears the imprint of the place, position, situation in which it is produced. How does this thesis relate to the position of gender scholars engaged in studies of Belarus in the current political circumstances? In this paper, I probably will not cover all of the issues which I planned, because I planned to start with the kind of general reflection on how can feminist scholarship on the politics of place, dislocation, nomadism, exile, and displacement can be useful in understanding our situation, the situation of gender, the state of art of gender studies in Belarus. So I will, it's not that I'm going to skip it, I will just provide some of the reflections and some quotations. And the major question is how have the political engagement, political repression, and migration affected the conditions of scholarly work, thematic priorities, research methods, and ways of disseminating knowledge produced by us, by gender scholars from Belarus and on Belarus after 2020. It's important to note, and I will later also tell about it, that for many scholars who left Belarus after 2020 because of political repressions, the conditions of work have changed drastically, and the empirical field, archives are not accessible for many scholars in exile, and it's not possible to return to the country. And so it also means that when we discuss the production of knowledge by Belarusians on Belarus, we also have to think on such questions as from which position we produce knowledge, to whom we speak, and who is the addressee of our text. So in 1990s, in 2000s, topics related to the politics of place, exile, or nomadic subjectivity were perceived by many of us as purely theoretical, very significant from the point of view of feminist theory, but not related directly to our own individual experience. To be precise, until 2020, the studies of migration and academic nomadism were relevant for us too, in particular for those of us who work in EHU. But exile and displacement certainly were not in our agenda. But after 2020, these questions and theories became relevant for the majority of Belarusian scholars who became scholars at risk in a broader sense. Here you can see the structure of my presentation, and those are the issues which I'm going to discuss.
But there is something, we are unsynced somehow with the screen. Can you check it?
Maybe here?
We should make
here.
it full.
Now it's fine. So
but it was full.
Oh, no, actually, just leave it. Let's leave it.
Yeah,
like
it was
this.
here, but not there. It's like in a different mode.
Yes, good.
That's
good.
what I meant.
Yes, so here we have several questions. I will talk about Belarus before and after 2020, how political repressions changed the situation in academia. Then, using the phrasing from Hannah Arendt's essay "We Refugees," in which she speaks on how to master an uncertain future, I will briefly present the situation of Belarusian scholars in migration. Then we look at how the gender scholarship developed during last 4 years after 2020. And the very last point in which I'm going to take as a case the master's dissertations in our master program in gender studies. So we will talk about these problems with which we face, as gender scholars face for doing research in exile. Some bibliography, I will leave it here and without commenting, just I think it might be important to understand what I'm... sorry. So probably it's, I don't know, can you see it or not, but... yeah, so here you have some of the well-known works, and even so Hannah Arendt is not a feminist, was not a feminist scholar, but I think it's important to put her name first. When she published this essay, We Refugees, in 1943, she wrote in that small text,
but okay, probably then we go like it was in this not full screen mode.
Yeah, but actually now it seems to be...
Yeah, here, but not there. So that's the problem. They don't, others don't see it.
Okay, so we need to return.
But we can do it like this then. Then I think we leave it like that and we go like that. Yeah, then it's
very good. So just
good.
So you see here, of course, the text by Rosie Braidotti and by Donna Haraway and Gayatri Spivak on the diaspora's old and new and others. And so here is a quotation from Hannah Arendt's essay, which I would like to bring here. So she wrote, "We have lost our home and with it the familiarity of our everyday lives. We have lost our jobs and with it the confidence that we can be of any use in this world. We have lost our language and with it the naturalness of our reactions, the simplicity of our gestures and the informal expressions of our feelings. We have left our relatives behind in the Polish ghettos." We are speaking of the Second World War. "Our best friends have been killed in the concentration camps, and this means the collapse of our private world." Actually, this sounds quite depressive, quite pessimistic, but just recently I came across one essay on optimism, and in principle the quotation, there was also a quotation from Hannah Arendt on this mastering an uncertain future, and it was considered to be like a kind of more optimistic, the author suggested a kind of more optimistic reading of this essay. But at present I think we are more on the kind of sad note. Then we have also another quotation from one of the texts of Rosie Braidotti, which is called "We Need More Planetary Dimension," and the essay is extremely interesting, and of course I would recommend to read it to everyone, but from this text I took just this quotation, which probably refers to everything that we have been discussing here yesterday and what we are discussing today, and certainly the topic will not be exhausted after we finish our conference. Because these different positions or different situations of dislocation, migration, and not chosen nomadism, that what she mentions in this particular phrase. Now, what we yes, and actually the context, which probably is important in order to understand what relevance do all of these ideas, including also Stuart Hall's reflections on the diasporic intellectuals and the problems with belonging and not belonging to places. What relevance does it have for Belarusian intellectuals and scholars? Exactly 20 years ago, HU, which is the university in which we are now, in Minsk was closed for political reasons. And from that moment, our nomadic history began. When my colleagues and I were preparing a thematic issue of our journal Topos, which was published in 2005, and it was just right after the closing of HU in Minsk, we called it Academy and Power, and at that moment we were alone, in a sense that we became the very first Belarusian university in exile, but at that particular moment when we were publishing and preparing that volume, the university just ceased to exist. So it did not exist in Minsk any longer, but it still was not relaunched or founded in Vilnius. in Lithuania. And so at that moment of time, for all of us, those who remained with HU in this non-existent mode, it was not clear what will be the future, this uncertain future of the institution, of us as colleagues who wanted actually to stay together and in the community which we formed. And then when HU moved to Lithuania, and thanks to the support of Lithuanian government and all donors, succeeded in opening and continuing the activities here in Lithuania, we actually considered, of course, the situation abnormal, but somehow we got used to it. And for many years, precisely in between 2005 and probably until 2020, many of us were commuting. You probably know this French word turboprof, which means that it's a professor or a lecturer who is commuting between the cities, and that's a normal situation in the majority of European countries which are in EU. But of course it's not normal when you live in a country like it was until 2020 in Belarus, but you don't work there. And for work you have to cross the border with passport stamps and customs and all of that. And at that moment, we couldn't even hypothesize, so it continued, this kind of commuting between Vilnius and Minsk continued for many years, but we couldn't even hypothetically imagine the situation which will develop after 2020. And we could not even think of that 20 years after the closing of HU in Minsk, so many people, so many scholars, and so many organizations will find themselves in exile. Without opportunity to return home in the foreseeable future due to the political terror that had established in the country. Our situation was anomalous from the very beginning, since, as I said, 2004. But what problems did it cause with the time being? We have realized at some point that we became invisible in the Belarusian context. I constantly tested when we conduct interviews with our prospective students. For many of them, it's actually a news, a fresh news, or it's a kind of new information that HU was once a Belarusian university. So actually, this question of losing the traces of Belarusianness or somehow the connection with the country, I think it's in the following years it will become a huge problem for many, not only for HU. And so then what we saw after the closing of HU in Minsk, and then also with the continuing political repressions even before 2020, there were actually several nomadic structures or infrastructures, several nomadic institutions which became very important for Belarusian scholars, and they appeared in different consequent years. Here, for instance, I would mention the International Congress of Belarusian Researchers, which was launched in 2010, and it was organized in different places in Poland and in Lithuania. Now, after already 22, already in exile, quite a lot of informal associations of scholars, educational structures, including schools and different NGOs. So many of them who found themselves in exile, they continue to work, but it's all, as I said, in exile. The entire publishing infrastructure also moved abroad. To name just but few publishing houses that publish in Belarusian language: Yanushkevich, Logvinov, Gutenberg, and Meni Nema, and some others. And so once I remember that Marina Naprushkina, who was here presenting yesterday her experience, I remember that once she did in her a kind of as an artistic work, she made a map of nomadic movements of Belarusian artists in the 1990s, 2000s. And I think that now probably it would be interesting to make the same to draw the same kind of picture of the nomadic movements of Belarusian scholars around the world before and after 2020. Certainly, Belarusian case is not the first and not the only one in the global history of intellectual nomadism. Many scholars who faced political persecution and then exiled to other countries, those cases are really numerous. In the 30s, as we know, in between the wars, or just on the eve of Second World War, but also it continues in our times. It's enough probably to mention here the situation of Syrian or Turkish scholars and many others. scholars. And also we know several examples of the institutional nomadism, such as Frankfurt Institute for Social Research, which moved from Nazi Germany to the US. And we all know that actually the fruitful result of this movement was the development of critical theory. Just for those who don't know this story, I would remind that Frankfurt Institute for Social Research found refuge in Columbia University in New York, where it continued its work under the name Institute for Social Research, and then in 1951 it returned to Frankfurt. Another example would be Abe Warburg Institute for Art History in London, and among Belarusian examples of institutional institutionalized community of diasporic intellectuals, one can mention perhaps the Scarina Library in London, which was founded in 1971. So this case is certainly not unique. And at the same time, I think that in terms of the scale of forced migration, by the standards of a relatively small country, in Belarus till recently there was less than 10 million people, the situation of Belarusian intellectuals in exile is unique, both in positive sense and negative. The negative consequences are quite obvious, although I will tell later about the negative consequences for research. But the positive side is that those examples which I gave about nomadic institutions means that right now from publishing houses to the universities, Belarusians actually managed to create the different academic and cultural infrastructures in exile. And so here I would like so as I said, this case is not unique, but it's certainly not studied well. And I think it will be important to understand this unique history in relation to the experience of intellectuals from other countries and previous historical periods. Here I would like to mention one recent book that presents a study of academics in exile, but so the book was published in 2022, but Belarusian case is not present here, and you see that it's called Academic in Exile, Networks, Knowledge Exchange, and New Forms of Internationalization. For those who are interested in this subject, I certainly would recommend it because it's really interesting how they it's really interesting to not only to get acquainted with the experience of scholars from all over the world, but also the very way how the book is structured and how it presents the question of knowledge exchange, forms of internationalization, and the importance of networking. I think it's really great. And so what the authors note is that we all know the value of mobility, and internationalization of higher education became a policy issue and became a policy priority. The mobility of academics is integral to public discourse, and of course it has wide implications for higher education systems and institutions' reputations. But what they are speaking about is that there is a scant research on the complex experiences of scholars involved in that what they call involuntary academic mobility. Which, as this book suggests, and as this book sits in tension with assumptions about academic mobility being universally advantageous. And so now we what is important? How do we study Belarus? Studying Belarus has been actually a difficult issue for quite some time, but not only because there are not so many scholars in the world of non-Belarusian origin who would be interested in the issue, but during last 4 years, actually, it became just really a huge challenge. On this, in this bibliography, you can see below two articles in which I think Andrei Vazyanov and me, together with my co-author, we have tried to somehow not to summarize, but actually to critically reflect on how the scholarship on Belarus has been developing during last years, because we understand that when we have a situation where the majority of scholars are either in exile, some are in prison, many those who remained inside the country actually switched to that what I called the scopic regime of invisibility. I will comment quickly on this. And some scholars who actually didn't even visit Belarus for many years, they faced criminal prosecution in absentia. Such was the case of so-called analytics of Tikhanovskaya. So these are the conditions which certainly are not favorable for any kind of academic production. And so there are really three groups whose conditions of work are very different. The first group are those scholars who have been working in other countries for decades and for whom academic nomadism has long ago become a part of professional life. Then we have a second group, and those are Belarusian scholars who were forced to emigrate, actually to exile, due to political repressions after 2020. And then there is a third group of those who still remain in Belarus, but either got prisoned, like for instance Tatiana Vodolarska or Vladimir Matskevich, Tania and others, all were fired, and therefore they continue to work in almost conspiratorial conditions. Those of you who are not Belarusians, you probably noticed that we are actually, many of us are publishing in anonymous mode, which seems to be completely crazy for academic world when you cannot really disclose your name. Those who are participating in the conference quite often appear only under the nicks and with no video, and that's really this regime of anonymity. It's something which contradicts completely to the very nature of, say, let's say, of academic work. And so it means that actually these three groups have been quite different. The reason why I wanted actually also to show this slide is that 2020 is over. We saw the growing is kind of the growth of maybe even like the explosion of interest to Belarus in 2020, 2021, when there was still kind of active phase of protest. But as I said, 2020 is over, and those publications which do not limit themselves by this list, but actually there were many more, and also in different languages. Somehow the agenda has been exhausted because the revolution has been oppressed, and the women's protest now continues to develop in different in other forms. And so actually for me it's really an open question, how will the scholarship, the gender scholarship on Belarus and even on the situation after 2020, how it will develop. And also some of these publications, why it's also important, Tania knows because she has direct relation to this issue of partizanka, so actually I can mention it to my students, but I cannot advise them where to walk, where to look for it, because it doesn't exist in the online version. And here we have the problem, which I'm sorry, it will take several few minutes, which we face with now in the scholarship outside the country. One can say that, of course, the very notion of empirical work and of the field work in the digital era has changed. But first of all, I think that some topics can be explored and can be researched only when you are on the ground, when you are in the country. If you are interested, I can give some examples from our master's thesis. And second point, even the use of digital instruments for Belarusian scholars now represents a huge problem. First of all, there is a ruinization of websites. We can give you countless examples of websites which actually were the platforms for intellectual work with the publication of articles. They were closed, they were banned, they were blocked by Belarusian authorities. You will not get them. Then zeroing out of the histories of projects and peoples and many kind of organizations, including NGOs. Then we have a problem of the dominance of Russian language in search engines, which makes it very difficult for instance, for scholars who would be interested to find the Belarusian language scholarship. It would be an enormous problem for doing it in Belarusian online. Again, just one example. I like this example because it really was striking for me. I was looking quite recently, I was searching for a book by two Belarusian journalists, which is called Anatomy of Freelancing. And the family of one of the journalists is Zhuk, which is beetle. And so actually when I made the search in Belarusian, I've got only 3 links, and all 3 of them were the images of the skeleton of the chapter of maybe it's also called. So it means that we have the pessimization of Belarusian language content and publications of independent media which are now extremist, and disabling or filtering even those visual archives that were created during last decades. Actually, HU is not an exclusion, because if you go to the website of HU, you would notice, once you know that there is such a problem, that many things are not published. We are debating each time whether to publish or not, for instance, the photography from this conference or from any other. So it means that this regime of invisibility, which is a huge trouble, which is so important for Belarusian scholars who remain in the country, but it also affects all of us. And so in order to finish, because I just would mention that many histories are not written, like the history of independent Belarusian culture over the last past 30 years. There is a bibliometric problem, the visibility of Belarusian researchers. This problem existed before 2020, but now, due to this anonymization and in the perspective of next decades, I think it will also have a huge impact on the visibility of Belarusian scholarship as such. So actually, these were just, I didn't want to provide you kind of catalog of our problems, but I just wanted to say that each situation that we're discussing here in the conference is different, but our situation in particular for gender scholars, I think it's something kind of very specific case. Ukrainian scholars who are in exile can come home, we cannot, and so it means that at present moment in Belarus, I would be glad if you would object my said statement, but I think that gender studies in Belarus switched into the mode of not only of invisibility but of non-existence. Sorry. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Okay, we have some time for questions or comments.
Thank you so much for your great presentation. I have one comment, one short comment, and two questions. So my comment, when we compare, for example, Ukrainian studies and Belarusian studies, I think one of the biggest similarities between these fields are that Western colleagues cannot come to our countries, and this is, I think, the biggest challenge, one of the biggest challenges, because we cannot cover all the topics that we have in our regions, and we cannot do it in a proper way because we just don't have enough resources in any way. But at the same time, we are somehow disclosed from the bigger dialogue. So I think this is something that we can reflect probably together. My two questions: what is the main political meaning you see in these alternative intellectual infrastructures that you described in exile? And my second question is, do you see any challenges or potentialities, probably some positive sides, when it comes to knowledge production in contact between Belarusian studies and regional studies in our region? I mean, Lithuanian studies, Ukrainian studies, Polish studies, and probably some other studies, and with Western academy. If you have any tensions or, anything, your reflection. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I agree that there are many similarities about, when one works in exile, so certainly there are always kind of troubles with getting to the field, and also not to be able to make research on those issues which are of interest at this particular moment. But as I said, you were asking about the political meaning. I think that for us the political meaning is not only to, it might sound kind of pathetic, but it means to, for us also to think of the intellectual history of the future, because we know now that after several waves of migration of Belarusian scholars in the course of last century, at some point, of course, they were landing somewhere, and then they were affiliated with the local universities and research centers, etc. So right now we don't even know whom do we call Belarusian scholars, for instance, from those who migrated from Belarus in the end of the 19th century. But still, either it was there was a kind of Belarusian origin, or Belarus was the topic or the subject of their research, or they were writing in Belarus Belarusian. So actually I think that for intellectual history of Belarus, the existence of parallel academic reality and the publication of text abroad will have a huge importance also if we look at it in the perspective of decolonizing of knowledge. So Belarusian scholarship in exile at some point will come back to the country. So that's what I see about what I can say about political meaning. And the second question about positive sides. Well, of course, the situation looks again a little bit kind of absurd that migrant scholars study other migrants. So it's like we really become this diasporic intellectuals, and diasporic intellectuals really choose a kind of different traits. But at the same time, I think it's when I'm thinking of this uniqueness of it, of this moment, I understand that already the uniqueness of such a situation provides a lot of food for thought and also for future studies. And certainly it might mean a kind of forced internationalization, how it was, and forced mobility. But I actually would be glad to see the better incorporation of Belarusian scholars into the international scholarship. Many of us know that in those three groups of scholars whom I talked about before, only the first group was actually, I mean, those who studied in different European and American universities, defended PhDs and got positions, etc. So only those are well internationalized. But Belarusian historians, sociologists, philosophers were really very provincialized until 2020. And so if I would talk about the positive sides, I would say that acquiring the knowledge of foreign languages, the necessity actually to build into or to get somehow affiliated with international institutions and international academic networks, all of this will give in the future also kind of really very positive effect. So that's what I think about this optimistic side of it.
Andrew?
Thank you, Almira, for presentation. I actually would just add a comment to what you were answering to Svetlana. When we think also, and we discussed this with colleagues, like how could we with our studies of Belarus contribute actually into understanding of the region, like, and one answer, and this is a sad one, is about the very innovative nature of Belarusian dictatorship. Like many things that they try, they do first in the region, and then others actually borrow the solutions, and sometimes also not dictatorships but hybrid regimes borrow this. And sometimes the solutions have a gender dimension. And one of the things we discussed with Olena Strelnik as well is the practice of not renewing documents for those citizens who are outside the country, something that Belarus has started in 2023. But then we also know that Ukraine now tries this, and Russian authorities also threaten to do this to their citizens. So yeah, but practice like originated from Belarusian regime. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, sometimes it's, and I think inside Belarusian discourse, it's not a novelty to say that Belarus is a polygon for trying different bad things. Let's say so. This as well.
Yeah, I would also just say, just add one example also of why it is so important for us to do scholarship in exile and to continue to research Belarus, being in completely different circumstances. Next week we are going to have a conference which is called Vasily Bykov's Frontline. And the conference will be about cinematic adaptations of the literary works by one of the most important Belarusian writers who was in opposition to Lukashenko. So this year we celebrate 100th of his anniversary, and in Belarus there was a complete silence. Quite clearly for Lukashenko's regime, he is an enemy. And so the fact that we can, on this territory in Lithuania, on the territory of HU, we can conduct and gather scholars who are studying Vasily Bykov's legacy and then publish also it in English, I think that will be of a kind of small thing, but still it will be very important in the future.
Yeah.
But very quickly, Svetlana, and then we have to wrap up this.
Absolutely.
Part.
I can somehow give up my...
No, let's. Yeah.
I just wanted to say that, to answer Andrei, that yes, I meant academy mostly. So of course you mentioned some case from outside academy. I just want to say that I have a very strong feeling that we have a very unique situation, exactly as you say. Both Ukrainians and Belarusians and also all other countries around us. And I have the feeling that we don't have enough contact, enough dialogue, enough intellectual exchange. And sometimes we go probably somehow it's more cases for disagreement in some way than for the opposite. And I think that a lot of other power actors can somehow use this in their interests. And I mean here mostly academy. I don't even talk about like big political actors. So I think that probably we can communicate with each other like more often and more deep. And in some way probably try to create new solutions, because we have this unique situation, we have this unique experience, and it matters. Experience and bodily experience and also sensual experience matters. So sometimes it's difficult even to translate this experience to other actors. Yeah. So thank you.
Yes, thank you. Just a very short comment on this. Actually, it's really interesting that there was a quite long period, about probably even 15 years in the history of our university, when we had a program which was, the center was called CASE, the Center for European borderland, and this research center CASE actually was built on American. It was developed through funding from Carnegie Foundation, and so the idea was actually to build the productive networking relations between us, Belarusians, Ukrainian scholars, and Moldovan scholars. And if you go to the library or on the second floor, and you will see the book series on Crossroads, you will actually see the result of those research grants and of those publications. Russia was excluded. So I think it was really something that allowed for too many of our colleagues to build the relations with Ukrainian scholars, but also it was done really bypassing the Russian scholarship and just only between us. Right now, I think it's just, I think it's now developing the cooperation under different circumstances. Unfortunately, the moment is too dramatic for both Ukrainian scholars and for Belarusians. Not probably for peaceful times. It would be better.
Okay, thank you very much. And we have the last but not least important speaker, Tatiana Arcimovich. So, but just be aware, Tatiana, that there is this problem with they don't correspond somehow. And let me see if we try to do it like that, perhaps this will work.
You mean firstly this regime and then no, just share maybe.
Yeah, now I think it will work. Sorry.
But nothing happens. Алексей?
No, nothing happens?
Yeah.
No.
А теперь оно не движется. Движется, все.
Okay.
Надо было сделать вот эту кнопочку. Все, теперь все движется.
Sorry, I need just a second to log in into my computer to present you. Okay, I would like to present Tania Arcimovich, who is a researcher with a primary focus in cultural studies, feminist theory, and art history. She earned her master's in sociology and cultural studies from the European Humanities University here in Vilnius, and defended the dissertation at the International Center for the Study of Culture at Justus Liebig University, Gießen. In 2017-2018, she participated in the interdisciplinary research project Transformation of Emotional Culture and Dissemination of the Depression Discourse in the Post-Soviet Societies here at EHU. In 2018-2021, she contributed to the international research project Reclaimed Avant-Garde, Central and Eastern Europe,
and it was a publication edited by Dariusz Kosinski, a lexicon of the Central Eastern European interwar theater avant-garde. Currently, she is involved in the project Protecting Academia at Risk towards a new policy agenda for thriving culture of higher education in Europe, project funded by the Gerda Henkel Foundation. And the floor is
Thank you very much, and it's a big pleasure for me to close this conference. It was not the plan, but yeah. In any case, thank you very much for these days, because I learned a lot, and also hopefully have new contacts. And for me personally, it was very, very productive. And yeah, I'm glad to present you. Actually, I'm just starting with this project, but in any case, already I have some materials. And yeah, this project, generally, this project, Protecting Academia at Risk, on Facebook, LinkedIn, you can find page we have, because it's project for 2 years with different scholars, and we will research the contacts from Romania, Belarus, Ukraine, and Russia, and migrant scholars are on the focus of this project. Particularly, my study focuses on the experience of displaced female scholars with at-risk identification. But today, I want to present just one perspective from my project, which appeared somehow unexpectedly, but after these 2 days, I think it should be, and it should be one of the important parts of my project. My paper focuses on that side of female migrant scholars' stories from Belarus, which usually remain behind at the story of success or completely marginalized without any record at all. The aim is to present the stories of those forced displaced women based on interviews I conducted who failed in terms of success and achievements, whether these women completely lost their professional status or radically changed professions. The paper considers the experience of female scholars who had position at a university or any other scientific institution and had to leave Belarus after 2020. I consider unsuccess not in terms of negative or positive connotations, but as a concept, and failure as a strategy, referring directly to Sarah Ahmed's interpretation of happiness and unhappiness, because both these terms have the potential to criticize the existing power discourse. My main argument is that it's not the failure of these women who had to change their professional identity, but it's a failure of the existing social and political system. Therefore, I argue that instead of marginalization and stigmatization of unsuccess as a subject's failure, such an approach allows to identify the complexity of integration and disclose existing structural and institutional gaps in neoliberal patriarchal societies. Except for the concepts of success and failure, the notion of missing data is also very essential. Before I briefly explain what I mean by this term, just a short note regarding success in terms of being at-risk scholars. Because as you know, of course, that there are many programs aimed to support scholars at risk. Just Google and you see all this description. However, all these descriptions are mainly gender neutral. There are thousands of happy ending stories on this website you can read, as well as the numbers of supported scholars and how they adapted to the new realities. But as one representative of such a Scholars at Risk program mentions, I conducted an interview with her, one should be a Nobel laureate to respond to the criteria of these programs. And I will return to this notion later. Often, these programs propose a guide instruction on how to manage the move and how to adapt, describing step by step this process. You see, for example, a screenshot from one of this program. It's very fruitful, but at the same time, it provokes doubts. For example, regarding this instruction, a scholar at risk
should have time to prepare for his visit, to solve visa issues, communicate with a host university, and so on. It's so like they propose to have like several months to solve all this preparation. Then they recommend having 2 weeks before starting a new duty at a university to manage all bureaucracy, 2 weeks. Obviously, this instruction is created for a man or like a single woman, and if this man has a family, a wife takes care on it. Or it should be a single woman, because 2 weeks is not enough to build infrastructure for a family with children. And symbolically on the cover, you see this picture of a smiling man, yeah, like who perhaps like as a symbol of promises happiness. And again, this reference is to Ahmed's happy, like to be a good citizen. So we can find these programs, read these stories, but what we see refers to visibility. Visibility and success go hand in hand. However, there might be a huge number of invisible stories, those stories linked with the notion of unsuccess in terms of being successful in academia. It is those stories of those women who had to leave academia because migration changed their professional tracks radically. And here the notion of missing data. The discourse of missing data should be taken into account not only to find ways of funding such data, but also to consider failed and unsuccessful stories as a missing data, which provides a critical tool for analysis. Another perspective on missing data is its critical potential together with failure and unsuccess. Missing data is not merely about the number of subjects for whom the data are missing, but also about the number of missing observations. In other words, it concerns the cases that remain invisible and not recognizable for scholars. For instance, speaking about unsuccessful professional tracks, the challenge is how to find these stories if people prefer not to talk about unsuccessful experience. Such a failure might marginalize them in the context of neoliberal order, which demands success in being accepted as a good citizen. How I find this story, so I belong to this group of people I'm looking for. I'm a female migrant scholar who moved with the child. My personal contacts helped me to find a potential interviewees, and then also other scholars who know me and trust me share contacts of the people with such a profile, previously asking them and vouching for me. In the Belarusian case, it's an issue of security that affects the process of conducting these interviews as well, so trust and network. What are the stories about? I present just several perspectives. Migration, Tesla migration. These female scholars did not plan to move even after the protests in Belarus were violently suppressed. It was the end of 2020, so even then they did not plan to move, thinking that somehow maybe they could stay in the home country. However, they experienced the risk because they participated in street protests, donated and signed petitions, and all these activities are criminal now in Belarus. But they stayed in the country till the last moment, and the last moment happened when it was not a risk, but a threat to be detained. They left with one suitcase, usually not being prepared at all in terms of language or knowledge about the academic system in other country. It was a spontaneous decision, so they had no time to check scholars at risk programs or apply. At the same time, there are only 2 scholars at risk programs for Belarusian scholars at risk, but no one helps with visa, for example. So these issues are usually solved through other channels. And these female scholars mentioned that they did not expect support from special academic programs or professional community, but Belarusian solidarity played an essential role. One of the reasons not to look for such programs or try them is a lack of self-confidence even to apply for such a position. On the one hand, we know that the Western academic system is based on a high level of excellence, which even Western scholars find difficult, plus language, which remains problematic for Belarusian scholars because of isolation of Belarusian science from international field. However, the second point, which I think is essential and refers to the invisible dimension of this lack of self-confidence, self-confidence is caused by the status of these scholars in the home country, where humanities usually have a low status, but only humanities, with much work but low income, where men mainly occupy higher privileged position. So talking about the professional experience in their home country, being really specialists in many fields with many competences, these women doubt their professional status. As a result, they do not try to look for a position in a host country and consider any job at a low level as the only possible option for them. The reality in these host countries become traumatic. They often do any job to survive, especially if they move with children. Some of them are ready to try to learn the language, to develop a CV, and so on, but there might be a lack of time and exhaustion. They should struggle. Some of them do not try at all because of the age, for instance, leaving space for their professional activity as a hobby. They do not see a future, or this future is about tomorrow or how to pay rent next month. Mainly, they are still waiting for the moment when they can return to the home country. Speaking about the peculiarities of these stories compared with men's experience, for example, female scholars remain more vulnerable for several reasons. They lack self-confidence and self-belief. They do not believe that they can compete with male scholars' profiles, even when applying for support for Belarusian scholars. They remain responsible for the family, which becomes more important than a professional career. They have less space for self-education, and their needs remain invisible as well. To sum up, I analyzed these stories from the perspective of the potential to disclose the means of power discourse and its channels for marginalization and inequality. I tried to discover and identify margins in terms of migration and professional status where these women are placed. However, I consider these margins or age, as quote from Wigman, the dynamics of error and achievements, unquote. Such an approach allows us to identify not only the process of integration in a more complicated way, but also produce a critique of the neoliberal order, which stigmatizes and marginalizes unsuccess as a subject's failure, the complete failure of her living project. According to Sarah Ahmed, happiness is not just an individual's object of desire, but also a social expectation of what constitutes, quote, proper citizenship and living well. Ahmed's critique of happiness aligns with Judith Halberstam's arguments, which tie success and failure to capitalist and neoliberal patriarchal societies. However, instead of stigmatizing losers, what usually happens in public discourse, Halberstam proposes to consider failure in terms of its critical potential to disclose, quote, a hidden history of pessimism in a culture of optimism, unquote, and to be turned into, quote, the weapons of the weak, unquote. Thank you very much.